Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Well, sorry, I'm a minute or so late. I had trouble with my computer this morning. Okay, let's see. Okay. We'll give it one more minute and then we'll start. Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is Vince Rogalski, and I'm chairman of the Gunnison Valley Transportation Planning Region and the chairman of STAC. So let us begin with introductions. First of all, Dr. Cog.
Ron Papsdorf, Transportation Planning Director.
Central Front Range.
This is Dick Elsner, Central Front Range.
Okay. Eastern TPR.
Gary Beatty, Eastern TPR.
Grand Valley MPO.
Mr. Grand Valley MPO Director, and I'm joined with by Rachel Peterson.
Okay. And I introduced myself at Gunnison Valley. So Intermountain.
I'm Brian Pettit. I'm the chair of the Intermountain TPR.
Okay. North Front Range.
Vince, this is Suzette Millette, Executive Director, North Front Range. I'm being joined by our new Executive Director, Paul Sizemore for the North Front Range. And it looks like our STAC rep, Johnny Olson, will just going to be a few minutes late.
Nope, I'm
And
here.
also, oh, there you
Nope,
are.
I'm
Sorry.
here. Johnny Olson,
See you on the
North
list.
Front Range.
And
Thanks.
also Becky Carrasco's online.
Okay. Thanks for the letters, Suzette. Northwest TPR. She might have some difficulty connecting in because we got her earlier, but she's driving around the airport. So, Pikes Peak.
John Leosados, Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments.
Okay, Pueblo area.
Eva Cosleon, NPO manager.
San Luis Valley.
Yeah, good morning, Vern Hersink, San Luis Valley TPR, and we're joined here also with Hugh Halleck, our administrator.
South Central.
Luis Lopez, Los Animas County Commissioner, filling in for Director Blasey, who was unavailable to be with us today.
Okay, Southeast.
Ron Cook, Powers County Commissioner.
Southwest.
Morning, Vince. It looks like our STAC rep hasn't been able to log on yet, but you have Sarah Hill, STAC alternate.
Hi, Sarah. Upper Front Range.
Morning, Vince. Kevin Ross, Weld County Commissioner, Upper Front Range Rep, and we got Elizabeth Relford on here as well.
Thanks. Southern Ute. Southern Ute. Ute Mountain.
Good morning, Brendan Adams, Ute Mountain Ute Tribe.
Good morning. John Cater. Okay, FTA.
Julia Weislow, FTA.
Okay, did I miss anybody? I don't think so. So first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the June meeting. It was in your packet that was sent out. Is there a motion to approve?
Donnie Olson moves to approve.
Is there a second?
Dick Elsner, second.
Okay, are there any corrections or additions? Hearing none, is there anybody that disagrees with the approval of the minutes of the last STAC meeting in June? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved. And moving on, the Transportation Commission report. Now, the Transportation Commission meeting was only half a day last month because of a holiday on Wednesday. So they only met between 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock on Thursday for their meeting. A lot of it was approval, a lot of resolutions. One of the things that they talked about is a review of Policy Directive 703, annual budget, project budgeting and cash management principles. And Bethany gave us an update on that. And the commissioners' question and concern were adequately addressed and pertain to proposed updates to 703. We also had a joint meeting between the Transportation Commission and Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise and talked about a number of different things. One of the things they talked about is Highway 50, the bridge, going over that. And one of the things on that, and I'll report more on that when I talk about Gunnison Valley TPR. But they had a number of different approvals for money for the bridge, and talked about the first approval of 10 million. Then there was another 10 million, and then the transfer of the ownership of the bridge, the two bridges at Mesa Reservoir, to BTE, and that was accomplished both at BTE and the commission. Policy Directive 14, Policy Directive 14 helped to directs the amount of money and the things done to the various projects and the various themes that we have. And so there was a lot of discussion about that. And the there's going to be more discussion about that, but the commissioners had a number of different questions, and they answered those, and we'll have that come back to us in terms of what's going on. And we also have PD 14, I think, in our agenda. Yep, we do, and we'll talk about that later. And so we had more approvals in terms of program distribution of the sub-allocated programs. And Darius gave us an update on those. One of the things they talked about is the fact that RPP was further had further discussion, and STAC recommendation was brought up, in which we had the formula of 25% vehicle miles traveled, and then 20% population, and 40% total lane miles, and 15% truck VMT. STAC recommended this particular formula. And so, the thing of it is, the discussion came out and talked about what was going on. And so the commission actually voted to continue with the formula that they approved a number of years ago. And so we'll keep moving forward with that, but there'll probably be further discussions on what that is. Then there was a state bridge and tunnel enterprise policy directive 16, and they talked about that, and that shared this workshop to provide bridge and tunnel board of directors with an overview proposed revisions to policy directive 16, oversight of funding for state bridges and tunnels. Staff is requesting approval via resolution to adopt PD 16, an oversight of funding for the state bridges and tunnel. There was a discussion for Small Business and Diversity Committee came up and talked about various things. It is explained that this is an opportunity only includes highway opportunities in relation to design, no funding program for other programs within the DBE goals. Okay, Diversity Committee is what it was. And Commissioner Adams wondered about opportunities for ESB to become prime versus subcontractors, consultants, and if there was any information available regarding the ability of subcontractors to become prime on contracts. And so the discussion was, is a lot of the subcontractors in the business disadvantaged are hired by the main contractor, the prime contractor. And the discussion was about whether the DBE firm could be the prime contractor on various things. And there was various discussions, and there are opportunities when looking at the small business program. This is room for conversation, and CD will have CDOT will have to be creative on how they look at this. Okay. And so that was that, and then they went on to the main meeting, and most of the main meeting was taken up by approval of all the resolutions, all the way up to I'm trying to figure out where it is here. All the way up to I think 19, and they all were approved. Other matters were the decision on a new chairman and a vice chairman, and of course the secretary. And the discussion was of Gary Hart. I think it will be the commissioner will move from vice chair to chair, and Commissioner Adams will serve as vice chair. and Herming Stockinger will continue as secretary. And that was all voted on, and they will be starting, in fact, they're starting this month. I think that's all I have. You have notes on all of those in the packet. Are there any questions? Well, I hope it isn't too quiet a morning as we continue. Moving on to TPR reports. Okay, Dr. Cog. Ron?
Thanks, Vince. I thought Mayor Mills was here. I'll go. We have a pretty brief report today. Our board hasn't met since the last STAC meeting, so not a lot of activity there, but did want to report out to the group on the 2024 Bike to Work Day. Dr. Cog's Way to Go program really did yeoman's work coordinating that effort for the Denver region. On June 26th, we had over 11,000 people register for this year's Bike to Work Day, but we estimate that about 19,000 people actually participated. According to our estimates or information, 24% of the participants were first timers. And we had different organizations host a total of 256 bike stations throughout the Front Range. And we had over 500 organizations participate in the business challenge as part of this year's Bike to Work Day.
Okay, thank you. Central Front Range.
Thank you, Vince. It's construction season in the mountains, so be careful out there. They did tear down the other half of the bridge in Fairplay, which was a great thing because they were starting to worry about cars falling through the holes. We had our TPR meeting Monday, and I want to thank Aaron and the entire CDOT group for a tremendous presentation, so we can get started on our 2050 plan and updates and everything that we have going forward. It helped a lot of the people who are relatively new start understanding how CDOT works, so it was a great job. Other than that, I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Eastern TPR.
Yeah, not much new here. We're in middle of winter wheat harvest, so a lot of trucks on the road getting the wheat into the elevators and the storage to then be hauled on off to the cities and rail and stuff to distribute nation or worldwide. So that's kind of where we're at right now. The construction projects are moving along good in our region. So not much else. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Grand Valley.
All right, good morning, Vince. So we had a board meeting. We didn't have a lot of action items. We did have elections for chair and vice chair, but that didn't change the STAC representation. So Cody Davis is still the STAC representative. He's not here today, so I'm acting as the alternate. We are deep into our Mesa County Safety Action Plan, and we're having, as part of that Safety Action Plan, we're having a safety symposium on August 28th. I'll put the link in the chat, but welcome anybody from Western Colorado or elsewhere to join us for that safety symposium. We have a lot of great speakers lined up for that event. And then also we're deep into our 2050 regional transportation plan. So just moving along with that. Thank you.
Thanks. And I've got Gunnison Valley Transportation. Well, the big thing in our TPR is the Highway 50 bridge over Blue Mesa. You know, that happened 18th, I think, of April when it was shut down because of a crack in one of the wells. And they've been working on it ever since. But starting on the 3rd, actually, of July, they were able to open up one lane going in one direction. I mean, you know, one over, then turn around and come one back. And that's sort of scheduled now. They have to be careful because they have a lot of work to do. One of the major things on the bridge is to mill off some of the paving. And they do that because they're adding so much weight with the repairs of the bridge that they have to try and reduce the weight that's constant on there so that the traffic can go over. So the lane openings are scheduled now, but you have to look ahead as to when that's going to happen. Other than that, you got County Road 26, which is open, continually being open, and that's open to all regular legal vehicles, and that includes trucks up to about 80,000 pounds. And so if you want to bring a truck over, you've got to go on County Road 26. The bridge will only accommodate passenger vehicles at the moment. And so one of the things they're doing is moving the crews that are finished with their particular work over to the Lake Fork Bridge, which is a bridge built exactly the same in terms of construction as the Middle Bridge. And they're going to be looking at that and inspecting it just like they did this bridge, and see if they find anything. So they'll be doing the various technical scanning of all the wells and this very thing, and we're not sure what they're going to find. If they find something and they have to close the bridge, it's going to cause another whole set of problems. And so we're hoping as they go along that they don't find anything wrong with this particular bridge. I'm assured that the Blue Creek Canyon, which is the work that we have done over the last 4 years. Originally it was scheduled for 1 year, but that's if we closed Highway 50 completely. And the public couldn't handle that, so they enlarged it to a couple of years. But then we had the I-70 detour, and they had to shut down construction and continue with the detour with the traffic from I-70. And so on and so on. But now we think it's all done. I thought it was done, and then somebody said they had one little problem they had to continue with. So it's close to being almost 100% done. We're continuing to work on what we're going to be doing with the 10-year plan and the long-range 2050 plan. And our meeting is on the 29th of August. And so we're getting ready, and also we're going to be working on the MMOF, which the commission did approve a couple of months ago, and now we can continue doing that, given the fact that the money for MMOF is reduced, but still we can get a project done here or there, and so we'll continue with that. So we'll move on to Intermountain.
Yeah, thank you, Vince. We haven't had a meeting since our last STAC meeting, but we do have one coming up a week from Friday, July 19th, where we will kick off our 2050 planning process. We are moving forward as one TPR, as I've said in the past, and we look forward to finding out if we actually split or we stay one in November once that's ruled upon. So, but until then, we'll move forward together and begin the planning process as one TPR. And we kick that off on the 19th of July.
Thanks. North Front Range.
Thanks, Vince. This is Johnny. So at our June 6th meeting, at the Planning Council meeting, we had an update from the Front Range Passenger Rail, Nancy Burke. She went over the status and the service development plan and where they're at. Another thing that happened at the meeting was we did make a decision that since Weld County has been removed from the district, that Tricia Canonico will be the representative for Fort Collins on the Front Range Passenger Rail. I won't get excited to let you guys know how excited I was that I could get rid of one committee. Sorry, Luis. The other thing is, you guys all heard Suzette. Paul Sizemore is our new director. I think he's going to be excellent for us, and he comes with great credentials, and I'm excited to be working with him. And once again, we'll be missing Suzette. And the last thing, we applied for an MPDG grant for the North I-25 Segment 5 project. We submitted in May. We have been asked some questions with the review team, and we've been answering those up with follow-ups. And that's all the North Front Range has.
Okay, Northwest. Heather, are you able to get back on? We'll try her later.
I'm here as well, Vince.
Oh,
So this is Brian Cirkvenick. I'm the alternate STAC rep for Northwest TPR, currently in Wildwood, New Jersey. I'll tell you what, we should get one of these oceans in Colorado. It's pretty nice. Yeah, not a lot to report. We have had some passenger rail meetings and some great heavy hitters from the state level involved and up in Grand County. Other than that, we've got our Northwest TPR meeting next Thursday. So we haven't had a TPR since the last STAC meeting. So that's all I've got.
okay, thank you. So Heather's still driving around in her car at the airport, I think. I'm not quite sure. Let's see, Pikes Peak.
Thanks, Vince. John Leosados, I'm the alternate as Commissioner Williams is not available this month. Like others, we have construction projects continuing to go forward and go towards conclusion. So we're very happy with Shane Ferguson and the Region 2 staff for all of their efforts, including the Mansip I-25 reconstruction, the I-25 Fillmore to Garden of the Gods reconstruction, and the US 24 Peterson Space Force base improvements. Additionally, from a planning perspective, we have our last tip was finally assigned by the governor. So we want to thank Jamie Collins and Kathleen Collins, although that is no relation as far as I understand, as well as our local folks, Jeff Guthrie and oh boy, I hit a thing, but well, the lady that works for Jeff, that for some reason I'm having a senior moment and can't remember. So that concludes my report, Vince.
Lindsay.
Thank you.
What was that, Aaron?
Lindsay.
Lindsay, thank you. It's one of those things where you think you can say it, but your brain just will not send it down to the voice box. So thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. And let's nobody tell Lindsay I forgot her name.
Okay, Pueblo area.
I won't tell her, John, I promise.
Oh, you're already
we've had some really great movement here in Pueblo, especially on the Medal of Honor trail and boulevard. If you don't know what that is, that's connection from Pueblo West to the city of Pueblo across the Medal of Honor, or the Honor Farm. So going from Purcell west to Pueblo Boulevard, and we have 3 different phases, and we're currently working on all of them. The first phase, we were able to add $1 million. We did some swapping of funds to accept the congressional discretionary funds. We also, they awarded Siete for the Medal of Honor, and they started, and they're actually making some really great progress for clearing and grubbing in that area. Also, they're about 30% design on phase 2 of that project, which is a trail running north to southwest of Pueblo Boulevard, connecting to other trails in our region. And then I'm also pleased to announce that Pueblo County received a RAISE grant for $8.8 million, and that's also for Medal of Honor phase 3. So we're doing some really great connectivity for our trail corridor, and we're really excited about that. That also includes, that RAISE grant also includes some adding some transit stops and some other recreational activities along our Arkansas River area. We're in the process of updating our UPWP, and we also had a pretty successful bike month. This is the first time we've actually had a bike month. We usually have a bike day. So we had a bike month, and we actually created a bike bingo card for participants to do different things around the city and county, and check off stuff on the bingo card. So like visiting a farm or riding in a bike lane. So fun things like that. And we heard some really great feedback, and I hope that it'll just continue to grow every year. And also we had our tip approved also. So thank you to Jamie and Region 2. And that's it for me.
Thank you. San Luis Valley.
Yeah, thanks, Vince. We have not had a TPR meeting since our last STAC meeting. Little update on the work. The crews finished their chip sealing on Levita Pass yesterday, and they'll be wrapping that up with brooming today. And that's about it. End of report.
Thank you. South Central.
Thank you, Chair Luis Lopez. We will be meeting our TPR now at the end of July on the 25th. And moving forward with keeping our South Central until this decision comes forward if there is a merger or not. We also been working with some state representatives and a senator regarding some bills possibly to move forward to introduce down the road. On the construction phases of things, Huerfano County I-25 bridge is still under construction and moving forward, and also out in Kim, Colorado through Pritchett, some overlay of some new asphalt, which is really greatly appreciated for our region down here. And plus all the other projects, I believe Highway 350 out into the southeastern is completed out between connecting Los Animas and Otero County. And a big thank you and shout out to all of the Region 2, Jennifer Sparks, Jeremy Van Meter, Mr. Martinez, and the maintenance crews and everybody down here. They don't get enough thanks for what they do for our region. And I want to just give them that. And on the Front Range passenger rail, I will be having to leave. I have a finance committee meeting a little before noon. And a big thank you to Mr. Johnny Olson for the 2.5 years he served on Front Range Rail. Johnny, your insight will be missed. And that's it, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Southeast.
Good morning. Today I have a pretty simple report. We have also been working with Luis and that effort with the bills to be presented. We have ridership for our Southeast Transit, Regional Transit, which is growing every month. We're excited to be able to offer 2 additional expansion routes. At this point, we are now going all the way over to Fowler on Highway 50 and then down to Springfield on 287. So very excited to have ridership growing. We have a meeting on the 24th of July at 10 a.m. and also our kickoff meeting or a meeting with the counties on the 25th at 10 a.m. And that's about all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Southwest.
Morning, Vince. I think
Morning.
it sounds like our chair, Heather, has come down with COVID, so I'm kind of pinch hitting here for the update. I think the main action out of our June TPR meeting was that Montezuma County has had to release some of their MMOF ARPA funds. So we are submitting some shovel-ready MMOF eligible projects to be able to use that funding in our region. It has to be obligated by the end of this year and spent by the end of 2026. So we will be bringing those projects for a decision at our August TPR meeting. And then we had a couple successful 5339 applications in our region. Archuleta County was awarded $418,000 for a park and ride, and City of Durango was awarded $660,000 to improve some bus stop facilities and replace aging fleet. And without my comprehensive notes, that is about all I have for the update. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Upper Front Range.
Thanks. We had a meeting immediately following STAC last month. We went over some announcements from our Transportation Commissioner, Jim Kelly, did a great job updating us there. We went over CMAQ funding options for 2024. We had an MMOF presentation, and then Brian Varela gave us a FEMA base level engineering presentation, which was quite enlightening on the maps and giving us some ideas on that one. So, and if people have the opportunity, I would get that program on your TPR agendas if you can. And other than that, is about business as usual. So thanks, guys.
Thanks. Southern Ute. Southern Ute. Ute Mountain.
Yes, right now we are, there's a few things that we are getting done through, the CDOT program or through CDOT, here at the Ute Mountain. We have, some fence work that they've been working on and also some, mowing. Although we do need to have that done again, the highways are, the mow job was about a month and a half ago, but because of the recent rainstorms, vegetation has grown back in quite quickly. We do have one little blemish on our highway on 491, just as you enter the reservation or about to enter the reservation from the north. And CDOT has planned on coming down and working on that. And we do have a grocery store that's going to be developed right across the street from that on that highway there. So, but we do appreciate CDOT. They've done a lot of work for us here in this year, and we're appreciative of that. Other than that, we're moving along, and we're working with the CDOT representative here in this area, and we appreciate the attention that they're providing us, and want to keep working with them. So that's it for now.
Thanks, Brendan. John Cater. Okay, FTA.
Morning, Vince. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Thank you. This is Emma Belmont with the Federal Transit Administration. Thanks for having me. I did want to make one announcement. Earlier this week, Federal Transit Administration made announcements for Bus and Bus Facilities Awards. It's FTA's largest grant program, and there's 9 big projects in Colorado that were awarded. City of Greeley is awarded buses. CDOT's going to be helping Telluride with a facility project. Archuleta County was awarded for a facility. Eagle County Transportation Authority received funding for vehicles. RAFTA got a big award, one of our biggest, $32 million for a facility project. The City of Loveland received funds for a facility. The City of Durango got funds for a facility and vehicles. Gunnison Valley Transportation Authority got some vehicle funds. And then also the City of Fort Collins got some funds to do ADA improvements throughout their system. So congratulations to all of you. I'm going to be excited to get those projects underway and working with all of you. Thank you.
Okay, so did I miss anybody? Okay, legislative, Emily or Jamie?
Hi, all. I can
There's
go first.
Emily.
Hi, Vince. Not a lot to report out on my end. We're full swing in the middle of interim. Of course, we tracked the primaries last month closely to see how that changed, and will change the makeup of the State House and State Senate. And interim committees are also in full swing. We have a representative on the interim cell phone connectivity study committee, which is studying rural connectivity for cell phones. And we also will be called to give several presentations to the TLRC, the Transportation Legislation Review Committee, which has not yet met, but will begin meeting. I think their first meeting is July 23rd. There also will probably be some presentations to the Joint Technology Committee, and then sometimes we're called in front of the Wildlife Matters Review Committee. And then I did work on a more comprehensive wrap-up report that's been finalized, so I'll make sure Aaron has that and sends that out to this team. And we are beginning to have some initial conversations about our legislative agenda, but nothing has been solidified or proposed yet. So they're really just kind of initial brainstorming conversations for next year. And yeah, that's really the main gist of what my interim is looking like so far.
Okay, any questions for Emily? Okay, Jamie.
Good morning, everyone. I don't really have much of a congressional update. They are getting ready to go into recess so that everybody can start running for re-election. They're very focused on November right now, and I'm sure we've all seen on the news, there's a lot of heated discussion going on between lawmakers. So the House has introduced their transportation funding bill for the what year is it? 25-26 budget fiscal year, I think. It's not going to pass the Senate. So I have a feeling we'll probably be seeing some continuing resolutions starting in September because they're not going to want to pass major legislation before elections. That said, my fun fact for the day, it is 7-Eleven, so it is National Slurpee Day. So this is your reminder for everybody to go get your free Slurpee. And then just some fun Slurpee facts. It was invented in 1959 by accident. A broken soda fountain machine. A soda fountain owner put bottles of soda into a freezer and discovered that his customers liked the consistency. Brain freeze is actually trademarked by 7-Eleven, so be aware every time you use that phrase. There have been over 300 flavors invented and served around the world, but in the US, Coke and Wild Cherry are still the top sellers, which makes sense. Those are my two favorite. There are more than 14 million Slurpees consumed every month, which kind of makes my teeth hurt. And then this is my favorite. The city that has been declared the Slurpee capital of the world because it sells the most Slurpees is Manitoba, Canada, whose average temperature is 39 degrees Fahrenheit. So I don't know. So there you have it. Everybody go to 7-Eleven today and get your free Slurpee.
Hey, thank you. Any questions? Okay, we're just a little bit ahead of our agenda, but I think right now we'll take a break and we'll come back at 9:25. So that's a little more than 10 minutes, but that's okay. So see you at 9:25. Thanks, guys. Okay, guys, I think it's time to get back together, so I've signed on and Aaron has put together the statewide planning update and PD 14. So we'll see if we can get going. Aaron, you want to start?
Yeah, I think Marissa's going to be tackling this presentation.
Okay.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Vince. Marissa Gahan, Multimodal Planning Branch Manager, and I'll be actually co-presenting with William Johnson today as well. He will be giving the PD 14 update. All right, you want to go to the next slide? Okay, so today we're going to discuss with you kickoff meetings with each rural TPR to kick off the planning process, sort of a preview of what we're envisioning for public engagement. And like I said, William will talk to you about the latest with Policy Directive 14. And by the way, I can't stop thinking about a cherry slushie, so thank you, Jamie, for that. All right, so we, like I said, are kicking off planning discussions with each of the rural TPRs. I want to give a special shout out to Central Front Range, who had the honor to be our first TPR out the gate. It was a really great first discussion, lots of thoughtful, insightful conversation. So we're just really excited to continue the momentum and kick off with the rest of the TPRs over the next couple months. So the planning discussions at these meetings are anticipated to take about 45 minutes. You know, and depending on what you have on the agenda, and maybe especially for the meetings that maybe are a little bit shorter in duration. Some TPRs may want to consider extending their meetings or adjusting the schedule just to ensure there's enough time for that discussion. You know, we really do appreciate you hosting us and carving out the time for these important planning discussions. You know, that we know that it can take some time to get through, but we really appreciate it. Some good news is that the rural planning assistance purchase order contracts grants for each of the rural transportation planning regions are going to go out this afternoon, so that will help with the TPR administration. We discussed this, I believe, last meeting or the meeting prior, where Darius was able to increase that budget in anticipation of some of these discussions. So look out for an email today from Kathleen Collins with those purchase orders. Not to leave out our NPO partners, we will have ongoing coordination with the metropolitan planning organizations, particularly those developing their 2050 plans currently. So Grand Valley, Pikes Peak, and Pueblo will definitely be working to integrate with you at critical times during the planning process. Definitely around PD 14 when we get a little further in those conversations, and of course when we are prioritizing projects for the 10-year plan. If you want to go to the next slide. So what can you expect at the first meeting if you are a rural TPR? So primarily, we would like to discuss changes since you adopted your last transportation plan. We're kindly asking that your TPR please review your 2045 plan. That will help us sort of launch into some fruitful discussions right off the bat. So just looking at your plan for what you like, maybe what could be improved on for your 2050 plan. You'll review your mission and vision statements. The regions will be sharing project accomplishments and progress that we've made on long-range plan projects and corridors since you adopted your plans about 4 to 5 years ago now. We'll look at some data trends. The good news is that Herman and his team did a great job of pulling together a lot of data from the TPR boundary study And we created a really cool map, interactive map that we'll be repurposing and using a lot of the data from. So this is going to really, I think, give us a leg up this time on having that data at our fingertips to use. And then lastly, we'll be asking you to help us identify focus areas for your TPR and any new needs, data, and trends that you want to explore in your 2050 plan. Do you want to go to the next slide? So I think you've seen this schedule before. Some new additions to the schedule are, you'll see on here, virtual town halls with your TC commissioners. So we're anticipating we'll do 2 rounds of those meetings, virtual meetings with each commissioner, and this will really, I think, help supplement the planning discussions. We're still working out the details if we're going to do 1 per CDOT region or like 1 per commission district, but we'll work out those details with the TC over the next month or so. And share that with you, but I think this will be a really great addition. We're envisioning 1 of these town halls to happen in the fall. And if you want to go to the next slide, another to occur in sort of the spring of 2025. So all these meetings, we're anticipating a series of 4 meetings in each of the rural TPRs. They'll build off one another. And so we're hoping by the spring, summer of 2025, that will give us enough material to help you write your 2050 plans, and we'll be reviewing those and rolling them into the statewide plan. Do you want to go to the next slide? So a little bit about our public engagement process overview. We did a lot of engagement. I think most of you are aware from when we did the 2045 planning process. So we really want to intentionally build on that engagement, share some successes, what we've delivered based on what we heard. To that end, you'll see a screenshot there of our accountability dashboard. We've worked really hard over the last 5 years to create new tools, such as the accountability dashboard, that show how CDOT is delivering projects based on what we've heard during the long range planning process. So definitely want to promote that, and then continue building and putting an emphasis on bringing in new voices to the planning process to help us make sure that our priorities are correct and help us set our vision as we look out to 2050. We'll be updating our planning page on the CDOT website, of course, doing some social media at critical times. We'll be bringing a lot of maps and GIS tools for needs assessments. Like I said, building off of the great tools that were developed for the TPR boundary study. I'm going to go to the next slide. We'll be launching soon a statewide transportation survey. So we'll be asking, I'm sure, for all of your help in promoting that survey to your regions and stakeholder groups. Like I said before, we envision approximately 4 meetings with the rural transportation planning regions, 2 or more town halls with the transportation commissioners. We'll also look at maybe some attendance at major public events, probably promoting that survey. We could use your input on maybe some of those critical statewide or regional events that we could hit. We will also be working to have engagement and integration from our mode-specific plans. So really exciting today. You'll get a presentation from safety, and you'll get a presentation about the active transportation plan. Both these plans are kicking off at the same time as the statewide plan, and that's somewhat intentional because we will be working really close and in lockstep to make sure our plans are very integrated with one another. If you want to go to the next slide. So upcoming engagement, just as I said, you'll get a presentation on the strategic highway safety plan. They'll be scheduling some listening sessions around the state soon. I'll let them talk about those during their presentation. And then Annalise will be discussing the active transportation plan on today's agenda as well. Next slide. So you've seen this timeline before as well. Just the key takeaway here is, we are shooting for about August of 2025 to adopt the regional transportation plans and the statewide plan. That's a bit flexible, but that's our target date for now. That will allow us, to take those plans and use those as tools to update our 10-year plan, which we're shooting to update our 10-year plan by the end of calendar year 2025. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to pause there and let William talk about PD14.
Chairman Rogalski, I'm going to ask you for some guidance here. I know that Darius covered many of the slides here, so I can either option one, give the entire presentation all over again, or option two, hit some of the highlights and the things that have changed. Do you have a preference?
Well, the thing of it is a lot of times we get these presentations and we forget. So go ahead for the whole thing.
No problem. Next slide, please. This is a diagram that we just casually call in the office a line of sight diagram. It's our performance landscape. It helps us understand everything from the governor's office, the Transportation Commission, our strategic plans such as the 10-year plan, our strategic investment plan such as the 10-year plan, the 4-year prioritized plan, the STEP, our strategic plan such as the long-range plan, the asset management plan, and other performance measures that we have. Outside of PD14, CDOT does have a greater set of performance measures that we use both to report to our governor, our commission, our oversight agencies like FHWA and FTA, as well as things that we do internally just as part of good business practice. And if anything that you can take away from this is that this gives us the ability not just to have line of sight, but good alignment from the bottom down or bottom down. That's hitting bedrock. From the top down or bottom up. Next slide, please. This is the setting the stage. I think if you're looking at in comparison to the last policy directive 14, more or less our priorities have stayed the same. Some of the names have changed to reflect the dialing in on priorities. That is, we want to continue to make travel safer on the roads. When you look at the performance measure and target, it deals with all roads, not just CDOT roads. The next one is we are dialing in on pavement and bridges. We are currently at 3.3% poor interstates. That's at the bottom of the rankings in the nation. Even though it says ranked 47th, we're actually tied for last place with Hawaii, believe it or not. Yes, Hawaii has interstates. We want to expand options for different modes. And so you'll see a focus here on transit. And then the last, aligned with the GHG roadmap 2.0, we want to continue to reduce GHG emissions from the transportation sector. Next slide, please. I frequently get asked, how often does PD14 get updated? The general answer is we will go through roughly every 4 years as we're kicking off the development of a new long-range plan and look at do we need to make major or substantive refinements to the performance measures, targets, goal areas identified within the policy directive. But also the commission at any point in time could also ask for us to go back and reassess, come back with recommendations to them. It is a Transportation Commission policy, so it is at the discretion of the Transportation Commission to request any changes or to keep the status quo. Next slide, please. We heard from you during last month, and we just wanted to reiterate some of the things that we heard from STAC. And, we did hear some things from Commission also, which later in the slide, I'll highlight some of the modifications we made by their request. So thank you for the information. One of the first comments dealt with, hey, general maintenance and condition of other assets. Are we going to start falling behind on those things? That's when I could tell you with confidence within our transportation asset management plan, we still have those performance measures for all 12 asset classes within it. So it goes beyond just pavement and bridge. You'll find things such as signals and ITS devices and roadway equipment. And, everybody's concerned, maintenance level of service and snow level of service are tied within those. So no, we're not going to lose focus on maintaining things to a certain condition level. Our challenge with PD 14 is that this is like an infrastructure investment plan. And, that I don't want to say you can look at this as being two different pots of money, but, there's the way we operate is there's asset management dollars, and then there's dollars that go to the 10-year plan. Again, I'll point back to the performance landscape. Our challenge there is to maintain the alignment. So both of those are creating a feedback loop onto strategic investments. There was a discussion about, hey, interstate maintenance, and I believe this was specifically towards pavement, is much more expensive than other roadways. Yes, that's true, but we do not keep our eye solely on interstate maintenance. In a separate slide here will tell you that we still maintain that 80% drivability life for all state highways. We just have a different performance standard for interstates. That's what we're proposing because we had feedback from the commission that we want to be one of the top tier states, not tied for last with Hawaii on interstate condition. Now, again, what we're doing here is, again, don't think of it as being two separate buckets. Think of it as two activities working together. This is where our asset management funds are working with the investments that we have within the 10-year plan. And that's how we believe we're going to be able to achieve the ambitious targets there. There was some support that, yes, if you're focusing on everything, you're not focusing on anything. That this is an opportunity to really dial in and do what's important. I got to tell you that support was very welcome because what we did was had multiple iterations of conversation about what are the common things that are important across all of Colorado. And PD 14 performance measures and targets are a reflection of that. And it's not to say that other important things won't be done. It's just in a time when you have limited investment capacity, you really have to focus on the things that are really going to help you statewide as well as in your respective regions get the biggest bang for the buck. Consideration of usage of roadways and assets and the measures, and really looking at the return on investment that we have with the performance measures and using performance measures for investment. There was a comment towards roadway and highway usage, usage of ridership and transit systems. Some of those things are not necessarily going to be lost. Other things we don't necessarily do. We don't go through and run an analysis on every segment of roadway to look at return on investment. I was at a separate meeting a few months ago where somebody was advocating for that. Our challenge definitely is information and staff capacity, but also how would we use that information? is the 10-year plan, long-range plan really focuses on strategic investments for a transportation system, not necessarily looking at individual segments. People travel someplace, not necessarily going from one segment of road to another segment of road. The usage question, I'm going to defer that to a later date because I didn't entirely understand the comment. How do we communicate this to the public and help policymakers use the information and understand what our needs are, needs in terms of both financial needs in terms of what the TPRs and MPOs help us establish as priorities. All the information that we have on PD14 is up in a public dashboard. And we do try to communicate that often with people. It's part of what we send out to our federal oversight agencies. And it's frequently the things that think tanks use to report back national statistics. We're going to continue to do that, but also I think that's the point of being ambitious with some of our performance targets that you see here, is these are things within grasp or just slightly out of grasp that we think we can do over that 2037 or the horizon of the 10-year plan period. Of course, we're going to continue to need greater public support as well as policy decisions to help us achieve those targets. And, we'll work with the communications office as well as the TPR and, our planning partners to get the message out. Here's what we're trying to achieve. Last one is ensuring that other data and other topic-specific plans are not necessarily lost, that maybe we've dialed in too much on this. This one, I want to give you some assurance with what I said before with that performance landscape. There are many performance measures that we use to help us make investment decisions. We do have a public-facing dashboard that anybody can access and see exactly where we're at, not just on Policy Directive 14, but other programmatic performance measures. And so we'll continue to use those as tools to convey the total investment decisions within the long-range plan and 10-year plan, as well as associated with other plans. I'll pause there. I see a hand up from Mr. Lyosatos.
John.
Mr. Lyosatos is my dad. Is my dad on the call? So thanks, William. I just want to hone in on sort of the scale of for transit. Obviously, the urban areas, Denver, Colorado Springs, etc. We have quite a few, a larger percentage of the population. So we have a better opportunity to make sure that transit is successful. I just want to be clear that what you're talking about is the policy directive for the state system only, and that you are talking and honing in on Mustang and Outrider. The intent here is not to get into the transit within the urban areas that are controlled by the local jurisdictions and not the authority of CDOT. Is that correct?
Not necessarily, but I want to be careful with words here when you say get into. In order for us to achieve, and it is a statewide target for revenue service miles that we have on transit, we need to work collaboratively with our planning partners.
Okay, and to that end, I think we can sort of work something out, but then it becomes a question of timeline and schedule. We have been working on our 2050 long-range plan for over a year. We have involved CDOT. CDOT has been very engaged, and we've gotten their project lists. We have, to the point now, we are finishing up the modeling, hopefully by the end of this month, and we will be putting together our package to submit to the Transportation Commission to review. So our plan, our current 2045 plan, becomes non-compliant as of January of 2025. So we really don't have time for everything to sort of play out with this. So while we are more than willing to cooperate and coordinate, there might be a need to sort of step back and say, okay, schedule-wise, some MPOs have already started their process and are really deep in their process. And these things might need to be implemented the next go around, not necessarily this. Otherwise, I would assume not only would PPACG have a non-compliant plan for 6 months or more, other MPOs as well would. So that's something we may need to look at. So thanks.
Okay, Johnny.
Hello, William.
Johnny.
Sort of expand a little bit on what he said. One of the things that's going to be hard for that user and ridership of a transit system that's outside of the preview of the DOT is those budgets and those policies and are usually under the charter of a city. So it's going to be really hard to make that a metric from another agency that really has no authority over the agency they're going to be putting a metric on. So that's just a comment that I'll make. Second, I've been involved in transportation a long time, and I'm not trying to do this to I don't even know how to say it politely, but I'm just going to go there. We have been investing in our asset program, I think 11 asset programs for a long time. I think you have 11 asset programs. You go through the asset management plan. You allocate your funding based on the part of the pie they give you. And in my remembering from back about 2 or 3 months ago, the asset program has actually went down from 2014, even though the DOT budget has went up substantially over the last 5 years. When are we going to look at the asset program and the metrics and the maintenance of the roadways and all of our assets we're tracking to ensure that we're taking care of those through the asset program and be as diligent on them as we are on some of the other items? Because I personally believe that I'm seeing a decline in some of our assets, and I think you showed some numbers that were shocking, but we really need to invest more money. We've been behind in our assets for a lot of years and invest more money into that asset management program to help step up our performance.
Johnny, I believe that's a question.
Yeah, I didn't know how to do it, William, without making it sound too bad.
I think the word you were searching for was patronizing, but you're good. I understand where you're coming from. We plan to talk to the commission about asset management and the planning budgets in August. And we will do that alongside of the normal Policy Directive 14 report card that we give off to lead into the budget process for the next fiscal year. During that, we'll have information about the performance curves as well as the recommendation on budget levels from staff. During every budget setting workshop that we have on asset management, the commission could choose to modify those budgets. Additionally, they have another opportunity to, as we're heading into the budget process for the next fiscal year, an opportunity to modify the planning budgets. There's, of course, other opportunities as funding is available to increase money that goes to the asset programs. I know that was kind of I hope that wasn't a cop-out answer, Johnny. It's not a simple question to answer without, me just bluntly saying, yeah, we've been talking about transportation funding as a whole for many years. The commission makes good decisions with the funding that they have available to make those decisions. I see that prompted a couple of hands. Thanks for leading me into this trap, Johnny.
So one of the things over the years, we always said, if you build it, can you maintain it? And the other thing is, if you build new things, can you deal with the old things? Because a number of years ago, we had a policy where we not donated, but allocated $100 million to those rural roads that haven't been touched for 30 years. And so that tells you that maintenance doesn't happen everywhere. And so the thing of it is we need a better plan that deals with the new and the old so that we have a system that's maintained at a higher level. Okay, Gary.
Yeah, mine's kind of following up on the asset management as always. We say we're going to be more strategic, and it's like, I don't know how we get more strategic when we don't meet the needs that we need now. So one concern I continue to have is we're not putting stuff into the preventative maintenance, the chip sealing and stuff. We've done all this rural paving over the last 4 years. But there's no plan to get out there and chip seal those within that 5-year period that would help extend the life of what we've done. The I-70 project that's being done, the overlay on failing concrete, is maybe going to give us 10 years we still have no plan on how to fully reconstruct that so it can handle the heavy traffic of trucks and people coming out of Kansas or going to Kansas. Same thing on I-76. And when my region, we look at interstates have been a top priority for us, but we also need all the other connector state highways. That some of those are 70 miles between communities that those connect. So we've gotten some of those, but we need to still figure out somehow in this plan to address that shortfall of the preventative maintenance that would help extend the life of our asset and slow the deterioration that we're continuing to see. And as we bring in new transit facilities and all these things that need more money for maintenance and preservation of those and operation, we're actually taking money away from preserving the system that supports all that. So I know you've heard this from me many times, but I feel it has to be brought up every time because we're not making progress in that direction. So, thank you.
Commissioner Adams.
I just wanted to, follow up on William's comments earlier about our better understanding of where we are on asset management. It's certainly something as Gary Beatty had mentioned that he is, for a long, long time, he's made this point, and certainly during his tenure as a transportation commissioner. It is something that I'm certainly aware of when I look at I think the earlier person who talked about this mentioned how we are falling behind in terms of what we're spending as a percentage of the total CDOT budget, and which is one of the reasons why we were very interested in bringing this up and looking forward to the conversation with with staff regarding where we really stand on this. One thing to remember is that all of the asset management money isn't just residing in the asset management category, it's also buried in some of the projects that we have in the 10-year plan. So I want to get a better understanding of exactly where we stand in the aggregate, both in terms of what's in the normal asset management category and what's buried in the projects that we envision doing down the road. But we do certainly, at least from my standpoint as one commissioner, do appreciate this point of view. And it's certainly something that is, it's near the top of mind with a whole host of other things. So I just wanted to just make that comment so everyone on the call would understand that it is not lost on this one commissioner.
Okay, other comments or questions?
I'm not sure if Mr. Beatty raised his hand or if that's a legacy hand.
Oh, see, it's gone.
The legacy has been broken. I do have some information on what is the total contribution, but it's limited to pavement. And just from conversations I've had with our regions and planning partners, knowledge on pavement it tends to be the major one. It's the thing that we drive on every day or ride on every day. Historically, through the asset management program, we're putting about $233 million a year towards surface treatment. If we look at in the existing 10-year plan, the remainder of that plan does identify an additional around $680 million that goes just towards surface treatment. So, incoming Vice Chair Adams, that is a great point. I hope I've provided some information. We look forward to talking to the commission and STAC about it more as we get to later summer months. Next slide, please. A rose by any other name is still a rose. We have some what used to be safety, asset management, or mobility is now advancing transportation safety, which we've been coining it that for some years now, fixing our roads and sustainably increasing transportation choice. And you see that that's going to be our thematic goal areas there. Next slide, please. It's important to look at what exactly is not included in our recommendation for the new PD14 versus what is included. And I got to tell you that one of the questions our commission asked us to present to them this month is, hey, with those current measures that are not going into the revised PD14, what are they, as well as what are the investment decisions that flow along with those? So we will give that information to the TC this month, and upon STAC's request, we could come back with that. Again, I have to reiterate on this. For the most part, and I don't necessarily like to speak in absolutes, but for the most part, the things that are not going to be advanced to the proposed new PD14, we don't lose performance measures and targets on those. Those exist within our strategic plans as well as our other strategic instruments that we use throughout the department to make investment decisions. A great example of that you will see in our Advancing Transportation Safety is employee safety. By no means will CDOT take our eye off of employee safety. It is still within the whole safety realm, but employee safety hasn't traditionally been an investment option, an infrastructure investment option within our long-range plan or within the 10-year plan. And that's really the whole philosophy behind why we're proposing dialing in on performance measures and targets, is to really focus on the infrastructure investment options that we have. Do not take that again as me saying, hey, we're not paying attention to ops. We are paying attention to ops. We still have those performance measures and targets in another format, just not in PD14. Next slide, please. This is we want to get to half of our fatal and serious injury crashes, as well as half that for our vulnerable road users. Colorado is one of the top or bottom states in the nation, unfortunately, for vulnerable roadway user fatal and serious injury crashes. One thing that I'm commonly asked is, where did this target come from? This is aligned with what our governor is asking us to do within the next 3 years, as well as aligned with where our Transportation Commission and our management is asking us to be as a state to make it safer to travel. Next slide, please. Oh, it looks like we did update it. Sorry. This is the measures not included in the new proposal. You can see that things like crash rate, commercial vehicle related crashes, highway rail, incidents are not part of PD 14. Again, those are still part of overall highway safety planning. And from my understanding, the strategic transportation safety plan that they have. The example I gave, employee safety, again, we still have our eye on it. It is just that PD 14 is now more closely dialed into the investment strategies that we will have for infrastructure investments in the long range plan and 10-year plan. Next slide, please. Fixing our roads. Here is, again, what is the challenge with interstates? Well, if you go higher than 5% poor condition on interstate pavement, you trigger a financial restriction from FHWA. That is in the form of somewhere between $130, $140 million annually. And that restriction has cascading effects because it is from a federal pot of money that is surprisingly flexible. Lack of flexibility is an actual penalty in and of itself. Beyond that, we hear all the time, and we've listened to people, that we need to do something about pavement condition. We've heard many people talking about, hey, as we're driving in, we know when we've hit Colorado because you can feel it. That comment is, while it's not entirely reserved towards interstate pavement, it is very closely related to the comments that we receive. So we are wanting to make a marked improvement on the condition of our pavement and not be last in the nation on our poor interstate pavement. That does not necessarily mean we neglect the rest of the system. We will maintain that 80% high moderate drivability life for the rest of the system. Again, I will point to what I previously said when we talk about, hey, I feel like the asset management budget hasn't grown with this change in performance measures. That's where we really need to have these in here to help guide the investment recommendations and the investment strategies, the projects that we prioritize within the long-range plan and 10-year plan to help supplement what we're lacking in the regular asset management program. With Bridge, this actually does represent an increase from our national performance measures, which I think was a little bit lower of a number. We want to stay at or below 5% poor. Next slide, please. Here is one, what's missing out of this? Well, naturally, we actually have 12 total asset management programs. We're not necessarily missing anything from pavement or bridge within this, but hey, what happens to the other assets? The type of example projects that are not in there are signal replacements, building repairs are in there, are maintenance vehicles. Please, again, do not take this as me saying we're going to stop investing in those. Those are things that would not have normally been within the 10-year plan. Our building repairs aren't there. Signal replacements aren't there. New signals possibly would be in there. Our maintenance vehicles were absolutely not in there, but they are in our normal asset management program, which has a set of performance measures and targets within those. We will still be taking care of those. Maintenance levels of service. I believe there is still a very deep dive conversation with our commission on maintenance program areas that comprise the maintenance level of service annually, as well as continuous discussions during the snow season on snow level of service. We will not just stop doing things in those. We can't. Our transit, there are still many things that we will be doing transit-wise. Our target that we're recommending within PD 14 is heavily geared towards increasing modal options, primarily through transit. But that doesn't necessarily mean we stop taking care of things like the asset management for the smaller agencies, or stop maintaining knowledge or oversight of the larger agencies on their state of good repair for their assets. Next slide, please. transit. I'm glad you have the new one. This represents a change both in transit as well as GHG. If you recall, before the last presentation was recommending an increase of 15 million revenue service miles, that has been up significantly to 66.7 million, or an 83% increase to 2037. Now, the change has been that there is a number of House bills that have passed this past legislative season that increase the amount of funding going to transit. This is still a statewide transit number. The question about, hey, we don't control some of these things. Well, yeah, I guess technically that's correct, but we do partner and we do collaborate with transit agencies, and we do keep an eye on what their forecasts are, and they have been incorporated within this target figure that you see here. With clean transportation, we had a lot of feedback at the last commission meeting dealing with, we need to do better. We need to align closer to GHG roadmap. The previous recommendation on this was a 50% reduction. We've increased that a little bit higher, but it more closely matches the milestones established within the GHG pollution roadmap. Next slide, please. Let's see where I'm at. Now, what is not necessarily being included within PD 14? Well, reliability and congestion. We will still do operations. We will still keep track of our incident clearance time. We're not going to just stop doing TIM training, but those types of activities are not necessarily infrastructure investment opportunities. They're investment opportunities that will still take place in discussions with our commission, and we still have performance measures and targets for them. I believe many of those targets with congestion are on an external facing transparent dashboard. Environmental impact. We're not going to stop investing in EV infrastructure. We're not necessarily going to stop transitioning our transit fleet to more electric vehicles, cleaner vehicles, and we're not going to necessarily stop awareness campaign. Again, these are initiatives and activities that, in alignment with the long range plan, we'll still do. We still want to describe that in the long range plan, but in a list of projects in a 10-year plan, I don't think I've ever seen an awareness campaign as an investment line in the 10-year plan. Definitely talked about within the long range plan, but again, this gives us focus on the actual infrastructure investment opportunities within that 10-year plan. Multimodal options. This is where we focused on increasing options for modal travel. And in that, we're not necessarily going to just ignore the things that CDOT can do or CDOT can do with our transit planning partners. Those things will still take place. And we'll have performance measures and targets for many of those things. Last slide, please. Was that my last slide? Ah, awesome. That may have been boring if you paid attention to the last one, or water through a fire hose. This time around, again, we will be presenting this information to the commission pretty much as you saw it here. You know, you're actually getting a sneak peek of what we'll be showing the commission next week. Comments, questions?
Okay, Emma.
Hi, thank you. I love to see the emphasis on transit. I'm with Federal Transit Administration. But I do have a question with all of this additional emphasis on transit. How is the capacity at the state being considered with this additional, emphasis on transit, wanting to get more money to transit? Is the state's capacity to manage that considered?
You mean staff capacity?
Yes.
Yes, it is. I don't want to necessarily say the wrong thing. I'm not sure if anybody from transit is online. Seeing nobody readily volunteering to address this. Emma, we can probably have an offline conversation with you. We believe that the increase in money to go to transit will not significantly impact our staff. That is, we've done some assessment. We don't think that, anybody's going to be unreasonably overburdened. But I think the big point there is this is a collaboration with our planning partners on transit. The bulk of new funds do go to them.
But the funds would be passed through the state?
I don't think so, not necessarily. That's not the way that I read it, but I'd have to really go through and assess that.
Okay, there's just been a pretty big bottleneck for contracting to get money from the state to transit providers. So with all this extra money, and I mean, I'm an advocate for this. Yes, we want more money going to transit, but we also want it to happen smoothly. We want DTR to get support so they can adequately manage all of this. So if there's not attention there, I really encourage some attention to go to this. Thank you.
Yeah, I think what would be good, and Marissa, maybe we can put this down, we could volunteer transit in the future. There's 3 new pieces of legislation that have different requirements and different flows of money, and maybe we can have a little bit deeper dive at a future staff meeting.
Hey, William, this is John from PPACG. I know Heather's got her hand up next, but on this same topic, just see if I can hop in and help you out a little bit with Emma. Emma, just recently, we at PPACG had some concerns about the contracting, but CDOT has made an effort to take a look at the contracting with the DTR, and they've reached out to all of the NPOs and had stakeholder groups. So it is an issue that they've acknowledged and are addressing, and we are very hopeful that all of that is going to be addressed. So I think at this point, you can be cautiously optimistic that the new funds that are coming in for transit will get through the contracting process in a streamlined fashion, and that we'll be able to use those. First part of your question that I think, again, I'm probably not the expert, but if other folks from CDOT are on, they can. My understanding is that when they did the legislation for the oil and gas industry, part of that money will be going to transit, and again back to the sort of the local. So it's not all Bustang and Outrider. It'll be your local systems that will receive some funding, as well as the funding we've received in the past from MOF. So again, I don't take my comment earlier about that we don't want to partner and we don't want to coordinate with CDOT, because again, when you look at the overall, how much of the transit puzzle can the state handle? It's very little, percentage wise. And, it's Denver and Colorado Springs that are the ones that, as well as the other urban areas that can do this. But we are being given the resources and we're willing to do it. The thing I really wanted to hammer home is just a matter of schedule and timing, because again, our long range plan is very far along. And if they want to do something new, we're hoping that can wait for the next iteration of our long range plan and will not severely hamper our schedule. So don't take what I said, Emma, earlier as unwillingness to cooperate, or that we don't think that we've been given quite a bit of resources after the last session. Hopefully that's helpful, William.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John. I was going to say some similar comments, but we can provide more information. I don't think Jeff Sidmeyer could be here today either, but I know he's been putting more resources into new offices and staff for contracting. Can't speak for DTR, but I do think I know a survey has gone out. We're doing a big effort to work with our partners and local agencies to improve that process. So I am optimistic as well that we're putting procedures, staff, and processes in place to be able to do this.
Okay, Heather,
Okay, can you hear me?
gotcha.
Okay, so I'm gonna not be as good as Johnny on this comment, but I'm gonna try to be couth with my comments. I guess I'm really concerned with policy directives and TC making these types of decisions, specifically on the God, how can I say this? Advancing the transportation safety. I feel like this entire thing is like putting a lipstick on a pig. And why I say that is because I feel as though all this money is going to get diverted straight to our interstate system. And I get it. I get that we're in a horrible state. But while we fix the interstate system and have these wonderful goals to push a ton of money to get us out of the bottom of the barrel state or nationwide, we are going to turn into being in the bottom of the barrel for our state highways. And I am really concerned that the lipstick is just going to get darker when we start assessing our state highways when we're focusing solely on interstate. And I feel as though this is truly the path that the state is going to go down. And I don't understand why we're not actually speaking to this in a more clairvoyant way and not trying to just skate around what the obvious truth is, in my opinion, is going to be occurring. I know that you're saying that this isn't the definitive end all be all, but none of us here are going to be convinced that monies and infrastructure are not going to all be diverted to interstates to ensure that the lipstick is covered. Thank you.
Aaron, if you could please bring us back to 39 and Vice Chair Sloop, I think we understand your comment, and that is specifically why we have 2 performance measures and targets for pavement. We're not taking any priority away or any investment decision-making from trying to achieve that 80% high moderate drivability life for the entire statewide system. They work together when we're making a network level investment decision for our roadways. I believe, and I'm trying to be clairvoyant with your comment, that especially in light of one of the previous comments that, hey, it's really expensive to affect change, to improve condition on the interstates, and there's got to be some trade-offs. Again, within the asset management plan, within the 10-year plan, there's a cost share. There's portions of it that go towards pavement in each one of those. And again, about 677 million is planned within the 10-year plan. And not all of that is on interstates. We still have a significant portion of rural roads, which outside of Region 4 is not at all going to go to interstate pavement projects. It's going to go to some of those lower volume rural roads, as we've always stated from the beginning. So our intention is, as we put this as a performance measure and target within PD14, that's what we're asking our regions to really focus on, is not just interstates, but also achieving that 80% high moderate DL for the entire statewide system.
But how can we have assurances within that saying we really want your regions to, put the money toward these and not have them be forced to go straight to the interstate? I mean, I feel like the pressure is on us to do just that.
I'm not putting any pressure on you, but I'm not saying that the pressure isn't there. Yeah, we want to improve our interstates. We also want to maintain our drivability life for other state highways. How do we ensure that we've got our eye on both? That's kind of like the point of performance measures and targets. So annually, we can go back and look at it and see how we're tracking, and really see, hey, if we're really suffering, as I think you're alluding to, on those other state highways, we're transparent. Call us out on it. We'll be monitoring it as well. Within the plan, we'll have a various set of dashboards and measures to look at what is the potential here, and how are our different cookies cut in this to ensure that we have a right mix of strategic investment options here that are going to help us achieve our targets.
Okay, excuse me, other questions, comments? Okay, with that, we're back on exact time of the agenda. So we're moving on to active transportation plan.
Thank you. Erin, are you able to share the presentation, or should I do it? Perfect. Thank you. All right, everyone. Hi, I'm Annalise Van Vano. I am the statewide bicycle and pedestrian program coordinator. So I'm here to give you guys a brief update on our active transportation plan. Next slide. So just to kind of do a brief overview of what is active transportation. So active transportation really refers to any human scale and typically human powered mode of transportation. So this includes walking, running, bicycling, rollerblading, but also using an electric bicycle, kick scooter, or electric scooter, skateboard, wheelchair, or other personal assistive mobility device. Just to give a little context. Next slide. And so this new active transportation plan is really an update to our 2012 statewide bicycle and pedestrian plan. So the 2012 plan was really CDOT's very first bicycle and pedestrian plan. It was initially adopted in 2012 and it was updated in 2015. So by the time we finish this active transportation plan update, it will have been almost a decade or actually a decade since we last updated this plan. So just to give a little background on the 2012 bicycle and pedestrian plan, it set some pretty broad goals. So some of the big picture goals that it set was enhance safety, increase bicycling and walking activity, expand recreational opportunities and improve quality of life, improve public health, improve environment and air quality, provide transportation equity, maximize transportation investments, and improve the statewide and regional economy. And it also set some targets, including provide bicycle facilities on at least 60% of arterial roadways by 2040. It also went into identifying some of the existing conditions. So for example, it noted that at the time in 2012, Colorado ranked 22nd and 20th for pedestrian and bicyclist fatality rates per population. So currently we have dropped a lot on that list. So now I believe we're at around 34th for pedestrian fatalities and 32nd for bicyclist fatalities. So, in the decades since we've updated this plan, we've seen a pretty big increase in pedestrian fatalities as well as some increases in bicycle fatalities as well. So that's a big part of why we're updating this. And finally, the 2012 plan also created a project evaluation approach, mainly based on some of those goals that I mentioned earlier. Next slide. So we have made a tremendous amount of progress since the 2012 plan was adopted. There's been a ton of new planning efforts, safety studies, safety assessments, as well as a lot of new funding for active transportation. So I won't go through everything on this list, but just some of the highlights include the detailed assessments of bicycle and pedestrian safety that we've done in CDOT regions 1 and 4, as well as the development of the vulnerable vulnerable road user safety assessment last year. Those are some really big improvements towards planning for safety. We've also expanded our Safe Routes to School program. We've established some really impressive programs such as Revitalizing Main Streets and MMOF, which primarily fund active transportation improvements. We've made a lot of improvements to our statewide bicycling manual, our Colorado bicycle and scenic byways map, as well as developed our high demand bicycle corridors network. And so there's a lot of other things you can read about them. This is in the STAC packet, so I won't go into too much detail, but we've made a lot of progress since the last plan was created. So next slide. So this new active transportation plan is really designed to build on all of this momentum that we've been experiencing the last decade and really push us into the next generation of active transportation in Colorado. So some of the purposes of this plan are to set new goals, policy recommendations, and actions to guide the next generation of active transportation improvements in Colorado. We'll also be working to integrate this plan with local and regional bicycle and pedestrian plans. And we're looking to establish a framework for consistent, defensible, and equitable evaluation and prioritization of active transportation projects, while still recognizing that the demand for investment in active transportation exceeds the available resources. And then this will also build from and inform other statewide planning initiatives to ensure that active transportation is thoroughly considered and prioritized in broader discussions around mobility, equity, safety, connectivity, and sustainability. So as you heard from Marissa talking about the 2050 statewide transportation plan earlier in this meeting, you know, we will be aligning very closely with that planning effort. And I believe this active transportation plan will actually be an appendix to the larger statewide transportation plan. Next slide. So just a bit of an overview of the process. We're envisioning about a 12-month process. So we kicked this off like April, May of this year. And so we're planning to finish this up and have it done by April of 2025. So here are some of the kind of key milestones. You know, we're working on looking at the state of active transportation in Colorado now. So that'll be really our existing conditions analysis. And then we'll be working on refining our vision and our goals moving forward. We're also developing a project prioritization tool, which will help us in future planning efforts to really evaluate different projects and really help prioritize where to invest in active transportation facilities. And we'll be working on an implementation plan with, again, the results will be to have the active transportation plan written and completed by spring of next year. And so throughout this process, we will be doing stakeholder and public engagement. I will talk a little bit more about that in some future slides. And we're also working to, again, align and integrate this planning effort with all of the other many CDOT planning efforts that are ongoing right now. Next slide. So a little bit more detail about the schedule. So as you can see, this goes from June through April of next year. So we have 3 phases of public and stakeholder engagement scheduled, and I will talk more about that on future slides. You can see here some of the big milestones and deliverables we have are in orange. So right now we're really working on that introduction and the state of active transportation and existing conditions analysis. From there, we will start working on the draft vision and goals, and hopefully we'll have drafts of that by the end of August. From there, we'll be really focusing on strategies as well as our project prioritization tool, and then our implementation plan. And again, we hope to have the plan completed and wrapped up by the end of April 2025. Next slide. So just to talk a little bit more about how we're integrating this plan with other planning efforts, we've assembled an active transportation plan working group, which includes representation from numerous CDOT sections, including the multimodal planning branch, our regional bike ped representatives, traffic safety and engineering, OIM, other parts of DTD and DTR, our scenic byways, our safe routes to school programs, our equity branch. So we're really keeping that group informed. That group will be meeting bi-monthly throughout this active transportation plan process. And some of their roles will include reviewing our draft deliverables, coordinating on public engagement efforts. We really don't want to be overwhelming people with too many different surveys or opportunities to engage. So we're really trying to coordinate those public engagement efforts as much as possible. And then also coordinating on data to make sure that we're using data consistently across planning efforts and telling the same narrative about that data. And then we're also be working to integrate with other statewide planning efforts. So we're working very, very closely with Marissa and Aaron and their team on the 2050 statewide transportation plan. We're also going to be working very closely with Manjari's team on the strategic highway safety plan and the vulnerable road user safety assessment. And we'll also be working closely with DTR to make sure we're aligned with the transit connection study that they're working on. Next slide. So a little bit more about our engagement. So we're envisioning 3 primary engagement phases. So we're currently in the first one right now, which is June, July 2024. So right now we have a survey on active transportation activity, barriers, and vision. I'll talk more about that on the next slide. So our next phase of engagement was really scheduled for fall of this year in October, November. So at that point, we'll have the draft vision, goals, and strategies. And so we'll be asking for feedback on that. And then the final phase of engagement will be February, March of 2025. So that is when we will be looking for feedback on our draft implementation plan, the prioritization tool, and the factors we're using in that, as well as just the overall active transportation plan draft. So we have some information up on our website right now. So the bicycle and pedestrian section of CDOT's website has a whole page dedicated to our statewide active transportation plan. So that is going to be a central location for updates. Our survey is posted there now. That's where we'll be posting opportunities to engage and get involved. And that'll really just be kind of the clearinghouse for where we're posting all of the most up-to-date information about this planning effort. And so we will also be coming to TPRs and doing TPR meetings this kind of fall, winter on active transportation. So as Marissa mentioned in her presentation, on that calendar of TPR meetings about the statewide transportation plan, there is a special session scheduled that will be focused on transit and active transportation. So that is when we will be coming to all of the TPRs to really hone in on what your needs are surrounding active transportation and to really give you guys the chance to engage with us on this planning effort. We're also looking to see how we can engage local agencies and so have some more ideas for engagement going forward. So a little bit more about our phase 1. So this is really focused on our initial active transportation survey. So this survey probably takes about 5 to 10 minutes. It focuses on current travel behaviors by mode and purpose, comfort with various types of active transportation facilities, current barriers to active transportation, top desired active transportation improvements, as well as an open-ended question about your active transportation vision for Colorado, and then some demographic information. So we soft launched this survey in June. We wanted to take advantage of Bike Month and Bike to Work Day to really promote this survey. So we started it in June. I think it opened on June 11th or June 12th. And then we've been doing a much bigger push for it in July. So we will have a digital campaign with some social media posts sharing this out. We're also working in partnership with stakeholder agencies and community organizations. So we've sent this out to a short list so far, but we're working to send it out more and more over the course of this month. So we would very much appreciate all of you helping to share this with your TPRs, with the local agencies who are members, and just get the word out and encourage participation. If you know of any bicycle and pedestrian advocacy groups or other community organizations that might be interested, please share this with them. The QR code is here and the link is in the STAC packet. So this is really our main focus right now. I think we have close to 500 survey responses so far, and we're hoping to get over 1,000 by the time the survey closes. Right now, I think it's open until the end of July, but we are considering extending it into August just to make sure we get as many responses as we want. And I will pause right now. I see a couple hands up. So I saw Heather Sloop, your hand was up first, I think, and then we can shift to Gary and anyone else.
Hi, is this the thing I got in the mail with $2 in it?
I'm sorry?
I got something in the mail with $2 in it saying fill this study out and then track your stuff on the 18th of July.
Oh, no, that was not this survey. We have not done any mailings or sent any money to anyone. So
I got okay.
that sounds like it might be the statewide travel survey, which is a longer running effort. Is that more of like a travel diary?
Yeah, you're right. Okay. I just
Okay.
want to make sure they were different because I think it's great that you guys are doing it. So is there something you can put in the chat box for at least that link so I can pop it to my constituents for
Sure
easy
thing.
access?
Yeah, I will drop the link in the chat. Just give me a moment to pull it up. But yes, that is different. This is a much shorter survey. It's not as like intense as the travel diary. That is a much larger effort around like the statewide travel diary survey. So I just dropped the link to our active transportation plan page in the chat, and you'll see if you look either at the right-hand side of that page under Stay Involved, or if you scroll to the bottom of under the page, there's also a section called Get Involved. Both of those have the link to the survey, and so the survey is available in both English and Spanish. Also, I see a question from Dana in the chat about a social media post. We have not issued a social media post yet, but that is something we are working on. That should be going out soon, and we will certainly share that with everyone once that goes out on our social media channels.
Okay, Gary.
Gary, I'm trying to keep track. There's a lot of hands up.
Yeah. My question is, are you doing outreach to bike groups or, the special interest groups that really support this? Are you doing outreach to other groups that are kind of against it or have reasons why they don't think it's a good idea in certain areas or different things? Just was wondering on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this survey has been really focused on folks who would be interested in active transportation. So we really started by promoting it through Bike Month and Bike to Work Day activities. And we have been sending it out to a lot of bicycle and pedestrian advocacy groups. But I totally hear you that not everyone is going to have the same opinions about bicycle and pedestrian activities, and that sending it only to those groups is definitely going to skew some results. So one of the ways that we're working to address that is some of the questions from this survey are going to be incorporated into that larger survey for the overall statewide transportation plan. I believe Marissa mentioned that in her presentation earlier. So we will incorporate some of our questions into that larger survey, and that will really help us that one goes out to a lot more diverse groups and people who are not just focused on bike ped activities. So we'll be kind of taking both of those into consideration and really looking at kind of how do bike ped concerns fare in like the overall statewide transportation surveys and like what the overall priority is. But then also like for people who are interested in active transportation, you know, this survey can be taken by anyone. Again, a lot of the questions look at your current travel behaviors, like how often do you bike, how often do you walk, for what purposes. So that's one of the reasons we're bringing it to you guys here, is we would love for you to share it with folks who may not be super focused on active transportation, and help us get the word out to wider groups as well.
Thank you. And I think the other question I have, I think, is in the safety stuff being presented. So I'll maybe wait on that, on the arterial use of, you know, trying to get more active transportation on arterials of our state highways, which I think may be partly why we're seeing increases of the conflicts with pedestrians and bike, is because we're trying to put everybody into one corridor and not just using things just off that corridor to keep the interactions reduced and those things. So I think that's a consideration. Years ago, I'd heard a comment from at one of the meetings talking about active transport of, well, we just need to get everybody out of their cars. Well, that's a goal for some people, but some people can't do that. And trying to squeeze people out of arterials, which are the main arteries for the cars and trucks and buses and things, and trying to then squeeze pedestrians and bikes into that same corridor, you're kind of creating that you're going to have more accidents, more heart attacks caused, because you're squeezing those arterials down for things that it shouldn't be used for. So just a consideration as this process moves forward is making sure we're not increasing the conflicts that are increasing our accidents and fatalities, because we're trying to do too many things in one spot or in one corridor.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. And again, that goal was really from the 2012 plan. So we will be fully reevaluating goals and targets and performance measures through this new planning effort. So that may change. And I would definitely agree. I mean, I think looking at, you know, complete streets versus complete networks. And I think one of the things we're really thinking about with this plan is that, you know, not every street is appropriate for all modes of travel. And sometimes the best places for active transportation are not on state highways or arterials. But how do we ensure that we are making it easy for people to walk and bike and use these active forms to get where they're going, and that our state highways are not a barrier to that? So that's really what we're focused on, and really thinking about more of complete networks versus complete streets. And I definitely hear you. Not everyone is going to want to get out of their car and walk and bike. But if we can encourage the portion of the population that is able and willing to do that, we can help reduce traffic, reduce congestion, and make it a lot easier for the people who do need to drive, by providing these other options for people who can take them.
Okay,
I would agree.
I guess it's kind of similar to what you guys are all talking about, just because in Pueblo, we have so many state highways that are going through our community, and just those are huge conflicts at intersections. So looking at that safety and, you know, not necessarily having the facilities on those state highways, but at least those intersections. You know, we already have some huge gaps because of railroad and rivers, but then also on top of that, there's the state highways that also prevent some good connectivity and access. So hopefully that will be addressed as well. Thank you.
Ron.
Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Annalise. Really appreciate the presentation. Really glad that you've had a little bit of engagement with our staff at DRCOG. I think I want to maybe ask for maybe some increased opportunities to formally engage in the effort. Dr. Cog isn't alone among the MPOs, I think, in terms of having regional active transportation plans and having done a lot of work in these areas for our regions. And I just want to make sure that we're not sort of just being relegated to participating through sort of the public engagement process, because I think we have a more unique perspective and more data and more information. And I've looked at your working group, which seems very internally focused at CDOT, and I wonder if there's opportunities to either expand the working group to have some of your public agency partners as stakeholders participating on the working group or with the working group throughout the process, rather than just sort of as part of the broader public engagement process.
Sure, that's a great question. And yeah, I have very much appreciated working with your active transportation staff at Dr. Cog. We've been meeting with Aaron and Emily really regularly to make sure that we're staying aligned, communicating, sharing data, and also coordinating on public engagement efforts. And I definitely hear you. Yeah, that internal working group is very much internal. It's more of an internal CDOT working group to make sure that internally we are all on the same page and that we're coordinating with our internal planning efforts, because we have so many different plans going on. And I definitely hear you about wanting to have more engagement with the MPOs and with local agencies. So we're still working on what that engagement strategy is going to look like. I kind of highlighted our 3 engagement periods, and this first one really is just focused on getting the survey out to as many folks as possible. But I think in the future phases, that is feedback that we've been getting, that we want more of an opportunity for local agencies and MPOs and TPRs to really participate and have their thoughts heard on this. So we'll be working on developing that. That's still kind of TBD at this point, but very much hearing that concern of yours.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Vince. And yeah, if anyone wants to ask me any follow-up questions or learn more about this, feel free to email me. I'm happy to set up some time to chat with folks. Thanks.
Okay, next item is Strategic Highway Safety Plan.
All right. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, Eva, could you take down your hand?
All right, Aaron, if you want to go ahead and start sharing the slides, that'd be great. Perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Gabby Gamley. I am a traffic and safety planner with the Traffic Safety and Engineering Services branch. Today, we're going to talk about our 2025 Strategic Highway Safety Plan, and it's going to be a very high-level overview. We just kicked off this project about a month ago, so it's going to be very general. And then you're going to get a bonus presentation from David Swinka on our Vulnerable Road Users Assessment results. Next slide, please. So why does Colorado need a strategic highway safety plan? So in 2023, there were 720 people that died on Colorado roadways, and then over 3,000 people were involved in a crash, resulting in a serious injury. Our vision for Colorado is that the future of Colorado is 0 deaths and serious injuries, so all people using any transportation mode arrive at their destination safely. Next slide, please. So what is a strategic highway safety plan? So you might recognize this under a different acronym, maybe the STSP, which was the Strategic Transportation Safety Plan. This is essentially reimagining of that original plan. So the SHSP is defined by FHWA as a statewide coordinated safety plan that provides a comprehensive framework for reducing fatalities and serious injuries on public roads. The requirements of the SHSP are governed by FHWA, so they require that state identify its key safety needs and then guide investment decisions towards strategies and countermeasures with the highest potential to save lives and prevent injuries. Next slide, please. We want to highlight that this plan is developed in partnership with our partner agencies within the state. So that would be the Department of Revenue, the Department of Public Health and Environment, the Department of Education, and then the State Patrol. So we will be working internally with these partners. These partners are responsible for helping us carry out these strategies, which is why that they are responsible for directing the development of this SHSP. Next slide, please. So this requires a lot of coordination, and specifically we are going to be following what FHWA guides us to do, as well as what our stakeholders need from us. So internally, we'll be working with DTD and we'll be coordinating with the SHSP team. We will be having virtual information sessions and updates, as well as CDOT leadership touch points. So we're currently just starting off with that internal coordination, and we are excited to eventually move to that external coordination, but so far we're still in that internal coordination phase. FHWA requires involvement from very specific people and very specific groups. So that includes federal, state, local, and tribal safety officials, state and local traffic enforcement officials, transportation planning organizations, multimodal user groups, and state departments. This will be governed by a mandatory communications plan. Again, we're still in the very early stages, so we're still working on the draft of our communications plan. Next slide, please. So I already went over the vision. Again, that is 0 deaths on Colorado roadways. But our mission is that Colorado agencies and partners will collaboratively implement strategies that eliminate transportation system fatalities and serious injuries. So again, you can see at the bottom, this is from our Advancing Transportation Safety website. Again, I believe someone already mentioned the ATS program. So we are continuing to use this vision and mission because it aligns all of our programs together. Next slide, please. So I probably can't reiterate it anymore, but we are in the very beginning stages of this SHSP creation process. So we're at the point where we're ensuring adequate leadership, communication, and collaboration. Soon we're going to start moving towards that collect and analyze data, and then so on and so forth. We literally just held our first project team meeting, and so we are excited to coordinate with ETD's statewide plan, the ATP, and we're excited to be included in the STAC meeting because all of these plans are going to come together at a really convenient time. We are also coordinating between these planning teams in order to expand our outreach to different communities and different groups, as well as minimizing stakeholder fatigue. Next slide, please. So again, this is a very general overview of our first step in our engagement process. So FHWA mandates that we do engagement and feedback sessions for the development of the SHSP very early in the process. So what we're proposing is doing one listening session in each CDOT region. That would be with our transportation and traffic stakeholders. We would also have one-on-one follow-up meetings as needed with virtual options, as well as having an online interactive stakeholder engagement tool, as you can see below. Next slide, please. So in order to comply with FHW requirements, these listening sessions are proposed to conclude before the end of September. This also allows the project team to actually go and be in the regions physically and being able to do that without having weather interruptions. Additionally, this also aligns with the statewide planning and active transportation planning efforts and engagement efforts. Next slide. I think the purpose of these listening sessions are probably the most important thing to highlight. So again, these are part of what FHWA requires us to gather from stakeholders. So again, this is looking at influencing strategies and initiatives, assessing the current state of safety, kind of determining what isn't working, providing a platform for collaboration and engagement, discuss and identify potential funding sources and improving safety, and then gathering insight about community safety perspectives, needs, and challenges. So this really is fairly open in terms of what kind of feedback that we're looking for. We are looking for feedback specifically from our transportation and local agency officials or people that work within that area. But we're really excited to just hear, you know, what is the feedback, what isn't working, what is working, things of that nature. Next slide, please. So this is kind of what our data analysis will look like. We're going to look at analyzing data from multiple sources, specifically looking at all of the data that's included in the Safe Systems approach. Within this data, we're going to identify areas of focus and potential countermeasures, very similar to other plans in the past. And we will also use stakeholder feedback and results to focus these recommendations. Next slide, please. And this is our overall schedule. So at this point, we are targeting November 2025 as when we want to have this plan completed. Like I said, we just had our first kickoff meeting about a month ago. So we are currently in the first phase. So that data collection, stakeholder understanding, methodology phase. The next phase, again, will probably happen in tandem with that first phase, and that will be our technical analysis, countermeasure development, and stakeholder engagement. And then once those two phases are complete, that's probably when we're going to transition into actually drafting those countermeasures, drafting the SHSP, and again, looking at that final round of engagement. All right. And so we are going to go to the next slide, but I'm going to skip questions for now in order to have David Swinkup present on the vulnerable road users assessment, just for time's sake. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. This is David Swinkup. I'm also with CDOT Headquarters, Traffic Safety and Engineering. And I'll be here to talk about the last year's 2023 Vulnerable Road User Safety Assessment that we conducted for the state. And in late 22, just for some background, in late 22, the federal government requested and required every state to do a Vulnerable Road User Safety Assessment and to get it completed by November 15, 2023. And this safety assessment consists of two main pieces. One is a data-driven safety analysis of vulnerable roadway user crashes that result in fatalities and serious injuries. And the second part is consultation with all the public stakeholders that would be involved. And this mostly consisted of local governments in those high-risk areas. And this plan had to be approved by the governor or a designee of the governor, which in this case it was Director Liu. This report is posted on our STSP website, and I will put that in the chat here in a moment. And again, the STSP is the Strategic Transportation Safety Plan, which is now going to be the SHSP. So easy way to remember is SHSP is the artist formerly known as STSP. So if you get confused between those two, they're the same thing. Next slide, please. So for this safety assessment, this really was meant to evaluate the trends over the last 5 years and to develop strategies consisting of what's recommended by FHWA, and also to prioritize VRU safety for all investments and projects. Applying the new safe systems approach is relatively new, last 5 years, and also consider equity in decision making. And you can see the graphs on the right here that, and this is why every state had to do it. I mean, it's not just a Colorado problem, it's a nationwide problem. And you can see the trends there. Going back to 2012, but even before that, it was much lower. To give it some scale, the non-motorist fatalities in 2023 were triple the amount in 2010 for the state of Colorado. So it's really been an alarming trend over the last decade or so, and certainly it hasn't escaped the notice of everyone, and that's why we're doing this. Next slide, please. So as far as the stakeholders, it consisted of various CDOT departments. We got Traffic Safety and Engineering, Office of Transportation Safety, DTD, also the regional traffic engineers, as well as other state agencies like Department of Public Health and Environment, FHWA, several cities like Aurora, Boulder, Colorado Springs, Denver, etc., the good Dr. Cog, and also like some special interest groups like Bicycle Colorado. And the outreach was meant to tie into advancing transportation safety efforts in STSP emphasis area meetings and our monthly meetings with our Transportation Safety Sponsor Committee. So we would have liked to got in more stakeholders in this process, but we did have less than a year to do this. It was a very compressed time schedule, 8 months. Certainly, we were able to get as much as we could during that limited time frame. But we were certainly grateful for everyone's contribution in that effort. Next slide, please. So as we last described, VRU fatalities have been increasing over the last decade, and also the serious injuries as well. And as bad as the graph shows it was from 2012 to 2021, 22 and 23 have been continually worse. And certainly just raising those alarms and getting that on people's radars as needing something to do about it. As for the equity analysis, that consists of taking those disproportionately impacted communities as defined by CDPHE. I don't know if everyone's familiar with the EnviroScreen 80, that kind of packages all the disproportionately impacted communities based on, low income and ethnicity and climate and housing prices and such like that. So really, it was just measuring the locations of your serious injury and fatality VRU crashes over those zones. And it did show that the crash rate per capita was higher in those disproportionately impacted communities as opposed to outside those communities. So there is a little bit of a correlation. And the report also went through several cities and CDOT highways to identify several locations where there was a discernible pattern of crashes related to VRU, serious injuries and fatalities, and highlighted those locations across the state as potential projects for improvement. Next slide, please. So the takeaways from the study was really highlighting some best practices. It was noted before, but Region 1 and Region 4 in recent years have completed a priority studies for pedestrian and bicycle safety improvements that can be keyed into our safety programs like the Highway Safety Improvement Program and the Faster Safety Improvement Program, which aligns nicely with the new Senate Bill 24-195, which is the one for protecting vulnerable road users. So that will be very helpful in supporting that bill. And Region 2 has recently begun on their own prioritization studies, but we really want studies to cover for all regions, and we'll be working with the regions to help them set that up. And the frequency, we haven't determined how often we want to run these. Maybe every year is too frequent, but certainly maybe every couple of years might be a good cadence for this type of activity to keep refreshing and find new projects to put on the planning list to work on for future years. Second thing is the utilization of before and after studies to evaluate the effectiveness of what we invest in our system. And, having experience evaluating HSIP projects, not every project's going to be a winner. Certainly, even with proven countermeasures, you hope that collectively that the net effect is going to be positive. That's not to say that we're not making good investment decisions. Typically, 80 to 90% of projects that we fund with safety funding do end up ultimately reducing crashes. But sometimes there's the odd effect where it's not as effective as we would like, or in some odd instances, crashes go up for some reason or one another. But when you compile everything and gather a good sample size, you do see that return on investment and effectiveness overall. But in order to do that, certainly we just need to do studies of every project and gather that data and kind of establish those results to help inform our decision making in the future of what tends to work better than others as far as type of projects that we're doing. Another takeaway was expanding the data resources for proactive and systemic analysis. the analysis, the data-driven safety analysis, was mostly based upon just the crash data and the traffic volumes. But certainly that could be expanded to exposure, pedestrian, bicycle travel volumes, and also a risk-based assessment. Certainly, non-motorist crashes don't occur as frequently as vehicle-to-vehicle crashes. So this would expand our sample size for us to do a better analysis for sure. Does that mean we need multiple camera angles for every corridor or highway to document every instance or incident or near miss? I don't know about that, but I think we could expand certainly with some basic things that are available in small pockets, but certainly they're challenging to come by, and certainly that data can help make for a more robust analysis. The same thing with inventory of vulnerable road user infrastructure. Where do we have sidewalks? How wide are sidewalks? Where do we have crossings, mid blocks, signals, etc.? To have that all in one place would be very helpful in doing the analysis to draw more definitive conclusions. And finally, the last thing was increase educational opportunities and outreach to local agencies to advocate more for VRU safety. And so I don't think any of these are really mind-blowing. I mean, but certainly it's good to put these on paper to really focus our direction on how we could do better for improving our VRU safety across the state. I think that was my last slide, so go ahead and move on.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, we're going to change the agenda a little. We're going to bring Region 4 up one, and we'll get to STAC bylaws and TPR IGAs last. So let's go to Region 4.
All right. Good morning, everybody. And I know, Aaron, I think you're pulling up the slide deck. So I'm really excited, and it's probably very timely. I can tell you sometimes things work out. We did not coordinate a safety presentation with my presentation, but the presentation for Region 4 is really going to focus on the safety projects and how we're implementing all the safety efforts that we've made statewide and then at the regional level, and how that basically transitions into action. So I just want to give a shout out to that first graphic. Really just shows, if you can go back one, Aaron, we've been working on something that is representative of Region 4, and from the mountains to the plains, all the things, the diversity of this region and all the ways we solve the transportation problems. I think this is just a good graphic to show what Region 4 looks like. So next slide. So the agenda, I'm just going to give a very brief overview, talk a little bit about advancing transportation safety, but I think that has already been hit on. And then some of our partnerships with CSP, and then the projects that we've done and some of the state, the safety focused studies that we're working on. So next slide. So Region 4, 13 counties. A couple fun facts, right? We are 9 of the top agricultural counties in Region 4. So we definitely have some heavy freight movement out in our plains. We are the fastest growing region in the state. We have the most lane miles in the state and the most interstate lane miles. We have a lot of floodplains. I don't know if it's the most floodplains, but it seems like every project encounters at least a railroad or a floodplain, which makes our projects extra fun and exciting. We have over 50 local agency partners and 522 employees when we're fully staffed. And I can say we are sitting at a pretty low vacancy rate these days, which is awesome. We're almost there. So next slide. So I'm not going to hit on this too much because I know we just heard about it, but I want to say at the region level, this is all about creating a safety culture. Really happy we have a WIG around safety. It seems to be a hot topic. It doesn't matter what meeting we are at, whether that's at our TPR meetings, whether it's at TC meetings, STAC meetings, whether you hear it across the news, people are always concerned about transportation safety. And we take it very seriously here in the region. And I think where we can affect the most is really on the safe roads, the safe people, and the post-crash care. really the safe driving is really talking about various strategies to change people's driving behaviors. I can tell you that is a lot of the media impressions that our headquarters office does. Obviously, we communicate that anytime we go out on our projects, but we're really focused on the infrastructure and the partnerships that we have with a lot of our stakeholders and first responders, really trying to lead towards that 0 deaths in Colorado. So next slide. And this just shows, the trends. And again, this is just another slide continuing to depict the challenge that I think we're facing, not only here in Colorado, but across the state. And I think there's maybe, the bottom graph, I would say the good news, if I can take away good news, is, the impairment is on a decline. So we have seen across the nation and across the state, people, and now it's still out there, so there's a still large prevalence of people driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, but it is on a decline, which means what we are doing and those media impressions are working. Unfortunately, we're seeing an increase in speeding, we're seeing an increase in aggressive driving, and we're, sadly, improper seatbelt usage is also on an incline, which we did a lot of work years ago for people to use seatbelts. And I can say a lot of people do still use them. But when I read the fatal reports, usually those without the restraints are the ones who seem to lose their life. So next slide. So these are just, again, just to kind of reiterate the headlines and the challenges that we are facing across the state and in the nation. So what have we been doing? Next slide. At the region level, we've partnered closely, next slide, Aaron, with CSP. And I want to just highlight a study that CSP did. I don't get to take credit for it, but CSP was seeing some really high increases in their rural roads. And so all those roads highlighted in Weld County is where they decided to increase enforcement. And enforcement really does make a difference. And so this just shows sort of the increase in traffic stops that they made, both across the county and then specifically in rural roads. If we can go to the next slide. And really the results of them increasing enforcement on those rural highways, they saw an 81% fatal reduction in fatal crashes on those rural roads. So that enforcement out there really does make a difference. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we have basically allowed CSB, we've partnered with them to do more enforcement on those critical routes where we're seeing high fatalities. So next slide. Again, this is just some headlines sort of supporting, right? I showed that 81% decrease in fatalities, and it was a 40% reduction across all of their accidents. As you know, stats, they're kind of all different numbers, but CSP tracked with their trackers an 81% reduction. Okay, next slide. So what do? We meet with CSP on a monthly basis to identify, or bi-monthly basis to identify low cost and immediate benefit and engineering solutions that work directly with law enforcement. And some of the projects that we've recently worked with them on is coordinating where can we, not only are we concerned about the safety of the travelers on the road, but we're also very concerned about the safety of our CSP workers. For them to add enforcement, they have to have safe refuge to do so. We don't want to put their lives at risk for doing enforcement out there. So some of the projects over the years was we added on 392, we did a safety improvement project adding pullouts specifically in Weld County during the summer of 2023. We currently have a project under construction on Colorado 52 doing similar. We do ride-alongs with our CSP drivers when we are doing a project. So in our scoping phases of our work, we will do a ride-along with CSP and say, how can we improve? We've got an engineering project coming. What can we do from your perspective to make this project safer? And is there anything we can do from an enforcement standpoint to either add those areas where you can sit and enforce, or safe refuge to pull over? And we also did this on I-25 segments 5, 6, 7, and 8. That was definitely a lesson learned. And one of the challenges I know that we have in very constricted right-of-way is if we don't have opportunities for CSP to do the enforcement or local law enforcement to enforce, say, the crossing of the double white line, which is why we've added cameras. We had the flexibility up in segments 5, 6, 7, and 8 to actually add strategic locations where the police can enforce, whether it's speeding or lane violations like crossing those double white lines. So those are just some of the projects that we've directly worked with them on. Next slide. We also work closely with, so I'm just going to switch gears on some of the other projects and the safety studies that we've done. 287 stretches in our region, basically from Lafayette up to Broomfield, up to the Wyoming border, as well as then in Lyman, and it heads down into Region 2. This area really focused, we've done 2 different studies, one in Boulder County and one in Larimer County. This section specifically, we call it more the lower section. This is the areas around Lafayette and Longmont. It's 4-lane divided, but it's a flat divided roadway section. And we have probably this is the highest fatality rate that we have in Region 4 on this corridor. And so we currently did a study on how to improve this corridor. If you want to go to the next slide. I will talk, actually, this is just a slide talking about the Larimer County portion. This section looks much different, 2-lane rural road. And I'll jump into some of the accidents that we're seeing, but these are just some of the pictures and the challenges that we face out there as it relates to safety. Next slide. So on the upper section, I guess I will be getting to the lower section here in a minute. I got ahead of myself. In the upper section, this is from basically Ted's Place, so just north of Fort Collins up to the Wyoming border, showing sort of the study that we focused on was from 2017 to 2021. There were 5 fatality, or a total of 12 fatalities, but recently, that isn't captured here, we just had another 5 fatalities along this corridor. 3 of them were student athletes from Wyoming. And the challenge there are our intersections. If you can go to the next slide here. We looked at all the things that are creating safety problems. And what I was anticipating was it was weather. This is a section of road that we close consistently due to weather. But that was not the leading cause of our accidents in this area. In fact, a lot of our accidents are due to wildlife. And then the rest are due to sort of the safety at intersections and passing lanes. There are not a lot of passing lanes and not a lot of shoulders on this stretch of road. And so that was some of the outcomes that we identified through the safety study was some passing lanes, some shoulder widening, slope flattening, and one wildlife crossing along with some fencing. Next slide, please. In this stretch here on the lower section here in around Longmont, we also did another safety study in conjunction with Boulder County. And what came out of that was that, there hasn't been a good strategy. There is a lot of access along 287. And what was determined here was to do an actual concrete median barrier. We attempted and did some studies on the, maybe doing some centerline rumble strips. Found that those are ineffective in inclement weather, and that is also where we're seeing a lot of those crossover events occur. So if you can go to the next slide. Out of our study, we found that 71% of all the crashes on that corridor were due to crossover crashes, and you can see that picture does a really good job of showing what typical section looks like out there on 287. And yes, some of them are due to inclement weather. Other times we've had people who've had maybe some sort of medical condition, obviously distracted drivers. July 5th, we had an incident with a crossover. 5 vehicles were involved, which included 1 serious and 1 fatality. 93% of all those crashes, the severe crashes are due to crossovers, and 100% of our fatalities on this route were due to crossovers. So our solution here is a median barrier. This is estimated to be around a $16 to $18 million project because we are changing some access points for individuals that have, maybe full movement, and we're going to have to create a couple improvements to other intersections so they can make adequate U-turns. No one likes their access being changed, but I can tell you no one likes to see the situation that's occurring out there from a safety standpoint. Next slide. So just to wrap up those two slides, we have put in for a NPDG grant. We are actually doing those two projects, although they're separated in distance a little ways. We did do a singular grant for about 75 million. So the north section there in Larimer County is about a $50 million project. It's identified in our 10-year plan. We have 16 million going to it. And then the Boulder section, when it's all said and done, it's about program cost of 25 million. And we also have 10-year plan funds identified. We do intend, if we are unsuccessful with the grant, to continue to try to pursue at least portions of those improvements on those projects with the 10-year plan dollars we have available, as well as with some HSIP and faster safety funding. So switching gears to the Plains, this is just a small community out in eastern Colorado in Hugo. And this is a safety project that's going to go a really long way to this community. This is a project that came from their community, specifically from their emergency services. Fire trucks cannot make these turns. Any of our semi trucks, there's a grain silo or an elevator lift on this corridor, they cannot make those turns. And in many cases, the turn is taken into oncoming traffic or is going up and over the curb ramp. As you can see in that picture, there is a park there, and there's been numerous close calls with pedestrians at the corner there. So this project is under construction as we speak, adding new pedestrian crossings, improving those turning radiuses, and as well as touching our drainage and striping. Next slide. Looking ahead, we've got another corridor that I would say is a growing corridor here in northern Colorado, which is Colorado 14, sort of runs from Fort Collins all the way out to Sterling, Colorado. We're really focused on the urban sort of rural area there. And a big stretch between I-25 and US 85 is a heavy commuter route. And we've just seen an increase in serious injuries and fatalities along this corridor. Next slide. And this just shows that study area and the other parallel routes, but it seems to be that 14, as I mentioned before, northern Colorado is growing. And so we're starting to get that mix of a lot of residential along with that those freight routes. And, Gary Beatty mentioned before, not every route should carry every mode. And those are some of the challenges that we're seeing as these communities are growing, how best to solve these safety problems, because not only is 14 carrying that sort of freight traffic, but it also goes through some small communities, which is their main street downtown areas. So we are looking at everything from how do we continue to safely carry freight on this corridor to, how do we address the safety needs of pedestrians and cyclists in these small communities. Next slide. And this just is a comparison sort of showing that growth that we've seen over the last decade, specifically between I-25 and 85, on average, a 50% to 60% growth. So this two-lane rural road does not support the volume of traffic it's seen and the interaction with all of the county roads. So we've gotten a lot of attention from locals and law enforcement to take a focus. So I would anticipate this being a high priority in the next round of our 10-year plan. Next slide. Another thing to note, we do an intersection prioritization study about every 3 to 5 years. We have a lot of intersections in the region, and we pare that down to about 25 intersections. And, we look at, anything from safety to operation to geometric conditions. If we can solve them at a low cost, we will do that with our MLS budget. Trying to address maybe operations to improve signal timing, maybe enhance the striping, we will address that. If it's something larger than that, we will try to tackle it through our FASTER and HSIP programs. And then obviously we are always trying to package our projects together. So if we've got an overlay project, we're going to take what comes out of those safety or the intersection prioritization study and do some of those improvements. So I guess an interesting, fact is that 67% of the projects that were identified in the 2016 and 2019 plans are complete. The other 93% are in design or funded to get completed. So the most recent study was done in October of 2023, and we're going to have another list of intersection projects to do safety improvements on. Next step. The other thing we've done in the region is a bicycle and pedestrian safety study. Very, very similarly, we're looking at what are the routes and the corridors where we can make the biggest impact and the largest improvement to bicycle and pedestrian safety, really addressing those hotspot locations. This becomes a great resource for not only us, but our local agencies. And again, our engineers use this. So when we have like an overlay project or an asset management project, we are looking at opportunities to bundle projects, making sure that we are addressing the pedestrian and bicycle safety on those routes. And lastly, this is a project in Longmont where we really did combine both the bicycle and pedestrian safety project as well as our intersection prioritization project. And this is a project currently under design and is being funded to enhance the improvements of those intersections. So we'll look at everything from signal timing to adding bike lanes, accessibility, and some of the geometric improvements that are necessary to improve the safety of this intersection. And that is all I have. So thank you. But I think it's good that we talk about the plans, and I was hoping to tie what we plan and all the studies we do to actually action and how we're spending those dollars to improve safety, specifically throughout the region, Region 4, but I know every region has similar approaches. And that's all I've got, Vince.
Thank you. That was very informative. Any other questions for Heather? Thanks, Heather. So next item on the agenda is Marissa and bylaws.
Thanks, Vince, and Jamie Graham will be here too with me to help answer some questions, but we wanted to just introduce this conversation today. If you want to go to the next slide. So wanted to bring to you today some changes that were made to the planning rules as a result of the TPR boundary study, or as part of that study. Provide you with some options for updating the STAC bylaws as a result of those changes or recommendations from the commission and what was put in the planning rules. And then we can discuss next steps. So TC adopted a resolution. There's a link to the resolution in this slide. We can send that out as well, that contain changes to the planning rules that again were based on the recommendations from the TPR boundary study. So there's two key changes that are relevant to the STAC bylaws. The first is, I'm just going to read them. In establishing procedures for appointment of a chairperson and vice chairperson, STAC shall include a provision for term limits for each office so that no individual may serve in either position for more than 2 consecutive 2-year terms.
Okay, so hey,
yeah.
Appointment is not the right word. It's election. The people are elected, they're not appointed.
I don't know what to do about that, considering I think that was in the planning rules. Jamie, can we change that language at this point, or does it?
I don't think we can change it without opening it up for TC. I think in this case, appointment can be used for both. I think it can be used as a verb. I don't know. Let me talk to Herman about that.
Okay, but they are elected. They are not
Yes.
appointed.
Yes, absolutely. We understand that.
Okay, and the second being to ensure the STAC's leadership represents both rural and urban Colorado. STAC is encouraged to require that when the chairperson is chosen from a rural TPR or tribe, the vice chairperson shall be chosen from an urban MPO area, and each position shall rotate so that no consecutive chairpersons or vice chairpersons come from either a rural TPR or tribe or urban MPO area consecutively. That language is in front of you. It's kind of a long sentence, but I think you guys get the gist of sort of those changes that were put in the planning rules. If you want to go to the next slide. So wanted to provide you today with some options for you to consider. Obviously, these are your bylaws, so just wanted to start that conversation. And Aaron, please chime in as well. We last looked at the bylaws, I believe, in October of 2020. Seems like just yesterday. But we did look at them in 2020 and made some updates about four years ago or so. At that time, I think the bylaws were in need of, I can't remember how long it had been, honestly, since STAC updated the bylaws prior to that. So I think we did make you guys made some pretty major updates at the time. And so you guys chose to assemble STAC bylaws subcommittee. I think John Lisatos was on that committee. Heather, I think you were on that committee. I'm forgetting, but it was a great committee, lots of thoughtful discussions. And I think it was great because that committee convened and brought back recommendations to the full STAC. Of course, I think there was more changes perhaps that we were considering at that time, but still, it was a good option. Because there's more focused changes coming as a result of the boundary study and the changes to the planning rules. You guys could also facilitate a discussion with the full STAC, or you guys might have other thoughts. We did put a link to the current STAC bylaws right there in the slide if you want to go read how the bylaws are written now. But just wanted to make sure that one, everyone was aware of the changes to the planning rules, and then two, get your thoughts today on how you'd like to consider updating your bylaws. Jamie, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's everything. I did do some quick Googling, and it is in fact appointment because the chair is elected by a committee or a board. And since you guys are a committee or a board, you are still electing the chair, but appointment is the correct word to use.
Okay.
Any thoughts on these options?
Come on, you guys, this is the most exciting part of the entire meeting.
We all want to get a Slurpee.
Right?
Right.
I mean, imagine the only thing that would be more fun would be coming up with a vision and mission statement.
Oh, Suzette, it looks like, thank you for raising a hand. Suzette? If you're talking, I don't know if we can hear you.
Suzette, go ahead. She doesn't appear to be muted, so.
Technical issues. While Suzette troubleshoots that, anyone else have thoughts?
Gary BD, I think maybe we just do it with the whole stack. Since we're not doing full rewrite of the bylaws, I don't think it should be that big an issue. It's kind of laid out what we have to do anyway, so.
Oh,
Yeah, I think while Suzette's having her technical issues, I can just chime in for her. I think the question that she was trying to ask was just about the necessity of having the STAC vote on this change, since it sounds like it was established in the rulemaking, and just confirming that the STAC does actually need to take action to update the bylaws.
Got it. And welcome, Paul. Good to virtually meet you.
Yeah, thank you.
If you want, actually, that's a good segue to the next slide. If you want to go to the next. So any changes to the STAC bylaws, they do require both a 2/3 vote and a 2-week notice for the STAC. So even though I think those bullet points are, pretty clear on, I think, what the recommendations are, or what STAC should consider. If you do make changes to your bylaws based on those, it will require a 2/3 vote and a 2-week notice. We also are thinking that that action should take place before October, which is when STAC elects new officers. And sort of related to this is, I guess all of you, or some of you, have been updating. Some of you have finished this process. Some of you had existing governing documents in place that were just reviewed and deemed good to go. But if for those CPRs that are updating their governing documents at this time as well, we're just encouraging everyone to consider a timeline. I know Jamie and everyone just wants this whole thing to be behind us. So that's that last bullet there. I see some more hands up.
okay, Ron.
Thank you, Vince. Thanks, Marissa and Jamie. Appreciate this. It's a little odd, right? Because there's a little bit of a circular sort of series of events happening, because I believe that STAC recommended these changes in the batch of changes to the planning rule that led to the commission doing the rulemaking and adopting the rule. And now the commission's telling STAC to change its bylaws to enact these changes to the bylaws that STAC recommended to the commission. And I do wonder now if STAC decided not to adopt these changes, now that it's in the planning rule and the commission directed STAC to do it, what happens? But I'm hopeful that that won't be the outcome. I think given the narrow focus of these changes, I'd suggest that maybe CDOT staff take a stab at a first draft of sort of the language change in the bylaws to make these changes and how to make these changes, just to facilitate a more streamlined conversation at STAC, rather than STAC trying in a big group think meeting to come up with the wording.
Thanks, Ron. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. We just wanted to start this conversation, get ideas like that, since these are STAC bylaws, we didn't want to be presumptive and just bring you some track changes without first making you aware and seeing what your initial reaction was.
The one thing that I've talked to Herman about it too is, we don't have a right to change it as far as I can tell. This is what the bylaws need to change to.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, the bullets, I think, say that you need to consider it true. I think it's up to STAC whether and how you might do that, but yes.
Yeah, because I asked Herman, for example, if we don't change the bylaws to reflect these changes, I could apply for chairman again.
That is true.
And he said, no, the bylaws are required to change to this.
Yes, it does say shall in the planning, in the TC resolution. The term limits are shall, and then the rotation between rural and urban is encouraged.
Thanks, Jamie.
And so the thing of it is, it's still, we can't change it.
No, because TC would need to change it because they voted on it. And STAC is governed by that rule in this instance.
Okay, Dana.
So it seems to me we just have to decide if we're going to require or encourage or not encourage the rural urban balance. Personally, I think maybe we should encourage it and not require it because there still has to be folks that step up to take those positions. So I guess to me, that's the only decision that kind of needs to be made since that part of the rule isn't a shall, it's an encourage. And so to me, that's the decision STAC has to make if I'm not incorrect.
Yes, and we did use encourage in that because we recognize that there are not that many people who are willing to take on or have the time to be able to take on responsibilities like this. And we recognize that.
Okay, Luis.
Thank you. And I kind of agree with how this was put in place here and agree with, the split between the urban and the rural. I don't have an issue with that. The issue I have is, and forgive me for not being on all these STAC meetings over the last few months, is even though I was at the TC meeting when I believe they adopted this, who gives the authority over STAC and TC? Does the TC have the authority over STAC and make the recommendation? Was it through through that legislation that was passed that gave the authority? How did that work, and how do we come to this point?
STAC is under the authority of TC as well as state statute. STAC was created through state statute, and there are certain requirements in the statute that STAC must meet. The one I can think of off the top of my head is the tribes were added and given a vote. There are requirements for which organizations need to have a representative on STAC. But in this instance, TC has the ability to oversee STAC governing documents.
Okay, so, and that's fine. But if that's the case, then why do we need to vote on this if it's already prescribed?
You need to vote to accept the updated bylaws once they're drafted. This is sort of a heads up, this is coming presentation, not necessarily a you need to decide today presentation.
Yeah, but at that point in time, we don't have a choice. It's prescribed already by the TC. So what's the point of STAC even voting on it?
STAC still needs to accept their updated bylaws.
It's just swallow it or don't, Right.
To admit, I have no idea what happens if you guys refuse to do it, but I will be texting my boss as soon as he gets off a plane.
Thank you.
Hey, Johnny.
So ladies and gentlemen, we have been through this now for over a year with 1101. And I'm Jamie and Marissa, I'm sorry that you're going through this again. And I know that just let's get it done and get it behind us. So what I'm going to recommend is sort of what Ron recommended and Suzette recommended. Bring us back a draft bylaws. We cannot change what is in the law or what is put upon us because we agreed to those factors many moons ago. CDOT has done a great deal of outreach, a great deal of coordination, and a great deal of due diligence and painful weekly, monthly meetings. So the understanding I have is we have to do a parliamentary agreement because we are in charge of our bylaws. We're not in charge of the rules. We're not in charge of the promulgation of the rules. That's already been done by the commission, but we are in charge of our own bylaws. So we as a STAC are taking what we've already discussed for the last year and agreeing to it in our bylaws as that vote. We're not voting on the change of the rule, we're only voting on that we're allowing it to go in our bylaws. And that is something this board has to do. We had to do it with the North Front Range. We had to do a vote on the change in our bylaws on the North Front Range based on these rules. So all we're doing is just voting on the change of the bylaws, what we've already agreed to. I know it's painful.
Thanks for the
but that's what we're
clarification,
doing.
Johnny. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been through the discussion myself, and this is it. Okay, so now, if this is the case, then we have to have this done in September or before.
That would be probably a best practice, I would think.
But I was under the understanding that we could do this before the end of the year. So why don't we all just agree to do this and pass it when we do our in-person in October, get the language drafted, realize I agree with Dana, just get the thing drafted with encouraged in there, and let's all pass it when we all meet in person in October.
Sounds good. And I think if you, based on what I heard, we can, CDOT staff can work on maybe a red-lined version that incorporates these changes so that when you meet in person in October, everyone will have seen it and will be hopefully ready for this to be behind them, and it'll be an easy adoption for you.
Yeah, Gary Beatty, I'd recommend we have that draft at the September meeting or August meeting. And then by September, we pretty much have full agreement so that we can recommend the adoption in October, so that we have the two, would be 4 weeks or whatever leading up to the October, I think would be the best timeline. But August would be when we hash out any minor differences we might have on wording.
Can do. That works for CDOT.
Okay, so do we need to vote on that, or do we all kind of agree to the process of having this done and for August to review for voting in September? Sounds like that's what we're going to do. Okay. Other comments? Marissa?
That's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, other items to bring before the STAC. The next STAC meeting on my calendar is August 1st. And it's a virtual meeting. Anything else to be brought before the STAC? Okay, so if there's no comments, no additional items to be brought before the STAC, then I'll consider the STAC meeting for July to be over. Thanks, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Happy retirement, Suzette.